Mayor Pro Tem, you want to do the pledge?
Oh yeah, I can handle that.
Okay.
Started trying to teach Jake that recently. Ready?
We'll go ahead and call our town board meeting to order, July the 13th. Welcome everyone here this evening for another one of our virtual town board meetings. Town staff, Mark Matthews, Assistant Town Manager, and Adam Mitchell, back from vacation.
That's right.
And I have been on many virtual meetings with the North Carolina Metro Mayors Association, and we have one coming up with the League of Municipalities Mayors Zoom meeting. And it's been very interesting. Last Friday, Dr. Mandy Cohen, the state health director, was on the call with us, and we were able to discuss with her the crisis that we're in right now. And I can tell you all this, it's a tough time out there now, and I think that all of us need to try to do a really good job about staying at home, wearing the face mask, waiting 6 feet behind someone, and
Washing those hands.
wash your hands, cleaning your hands as often as possible. These are the things that the governor and the state are asking us to do, and we're trying to do a good job of it here at our town, and our town board is trying to do a good job of it. Our town staff is, and we're trying hard to move this message back into our community so our community can reopen thoroughly. We still have some businesses that are not able to thoroughly open all the way back up, and we're concerned about those. We want to get them opened as quickly as possible. We're coming up with a critical period of time right now because of the schools and school openings. And I really believe the governor has a big assignment, to help move us through this critical process for the young people's lives. It's a tough time in Fuquay-Varina and in North Carolina and in the United States of America. Okay, we will go to our invocation. I've asked Commissioner Smith to lead us in our invocation, and our Mayor Pro Tem to lead us in our pledge. All stand.
Let's pray together. Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you for the opportunity you've given us once again to gather as a group of town officials to deliberate the town's business. I pray you'll give us a good discussion tonight. I pray you give them wisdom as we have to make decisions that affect the citizens of our town. Lord, as the mayor said, we are in tough times in our nation, our state, our community, even across the world. And I just pray for wisdom for our leaders across this nation, across the state, and for us locally as we try to make the best decisions possible to make things the most healthy and best situation we can for our citizens. Lord, I do pray that you'll just lead, guide, and direct us in all that we do, especially tonight as we deliberate the town's business. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Face the flag, join me in the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
At this time, I'll ask our town manager to review the meeting protocol for the public participation as it relates to this virtual meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and board members. It's good to be back with you. It's been a few weeks since our last town board meeting. So I'm going to review the meeting protocol and instructions for tonight's meeting for the public's benefit. All attendees that have joined the meeting tonight have joined muted. There is a public comment period this evening and several public hearings scheduled for tonight's meeting. The only time to address the board regarding items that are not the subject of a public hearing is during the public comment section at the beginning of the meeting. If someone from the public wishes to address the board either at the public comment period or during a public hearing, they will need to notify the town host that they wish to speak. So for the public's benefit, if you are joining the meeting online and you wish to speak, please press the raise hand button in the Zoom application. If you are joining the meeting via telephone, please press *9 to raise your hand. After you've raised your hand, you will enter into a queue. When the public comment period begins, Mayor Byrne will ask the town host to recognize you to speak by calling out your name or last 4 digits of your telephone number. You will be unmuted at that time and allowed to speak. We ask the public to begin their comments by stating their name and address for the public record. The public is asked to keep all comments to 3 minutes so that all that wish to speak can be heard in a timely manner. Once an individual from the public has finished addressing the town board, they will be remuted for the remainder of the meeting. And Mr. Mayor, this concludes the protocol for tonight's meeting.
Thank you very much, Adam. We'll move to 3A, approval of the minutes from the June 16th, 2020 regular scheduled town board meeting.
Mayor, make a motion to approve the minutes of the June 16, 2020 town board meeting as presented and recommended.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. There are no presentations for the July 13th town board meeting. We now move into the public comment period. At this time, the IT director, Scott, will call on individuals that have virtually raised their hand by way of the Zoom app or by telephone. Those wishing to address the town board will be unmuted one at a time. As a reminder, public comment is for those wishing to speak on a matter that is not subject of a public hearing. Those speaking are asked to begin by stating your name and address for the public record. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes in order that all who wish to speak may be heard in a timely manner. Scott, do you have anybody?
Yes, sir. We have Jerry Vaughn.
Okay.
Jerry, please unmute your mic and you can talk.
Jerry?
Good evening. This is actually Jerry's wife, Dana Vaughn. I didn't have a chance to change my name on there.
That's good.
So Dana Vaughn, and my address is 1612 Bowling Road in Fuquay.
Okay.
And I'm prepared to speak now.
Yes, ma'am. You go right ahead.
My name is, okay, thank you. My name is Dana Vaughn, and I am speaking tonight on behalf of our Love Thy Neighbor ministry at First United Methodist Church, 402 North Main Street. For the past 7.5 years, our church has been meeting at the James A. Campbell Park on the first Wednesday of each month. There are also other churches and ministry groups that meet at the park the other Wednesdays of the month. Our Love Thy Neighbor ministry partners with the community surrounding the James A. Campbell Park for an afternoon of fellowship, food, and worship. The picnic shelter is often overflowing with over 30 or more people gathered in the name of community. The playground is full of laughter and joy as the children run and play at their neighborhood park. I believe Mr. Campbell would be so proud of the relationships being formed at the park. He had a heart for children and serving his community. I am here to advocate for bathroom facilities to be installed at the James A. Campbell Park on West John Street. Groups are meeting weekly for meals in the picnic shelter. For sanitary reasons, it would be beneficial to have a location to wash hands when serving food. I want to go back to the relationships though. We have developed lasting friendships and know the stories of many people in this community. Many of our friends attending the lunch do not have transportation. They walk to the park, which would make it difficult to return to their home if a bathroom visit was needed. Yes, there is a porta-john available, but it does not provide a sanitary or easily accessible option for our friends. For example, Miss Rena struggles physically to attend our lunches. She has to bring a special chair instead of sitting on the picnic benches. There is no way she can physically access the porta-john. Miss Portia is a grandmother helping to raise her young grandchildren. They enjoy the lunches and playing on the playground. A bathroom would be wonderful for this family to wash their hands after playing before enjoying a picnic lunch. We have a couple that attends regularly in which the husband is legally blind. The wife is not able to guide him into a porta-john. It would be much safer if she could guide him into a handicap accessible bathroom. Mr. Terry has a disability and rides over to the park on his motorized scooter. He cannot access a porta-john. Many of the people that utilize this park weekly would benefit from a facility that follows the ADA guidelines. I could go on. Commissioners, just as Mr. Campbell impacted the lives of so many in our community, you all have the opportunity to do the same for the community surrounding James A. Campbell Park and our greater community. I urge you to move forward swiftly with this project because we as a community need it to fully utilize the park for the safety and personal well-being for all of us who enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for, for speaking. Our town board has recognized that for about 2 years now. We're struggling with kind of getting a good bid for this, and we have worked diligently within our community, and we're kind of hopeful that we'll have some better bids and we can get this project done. But thank you for sharing those thoughts with us. They are very meaningful.
Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Okay. Scott?
There are no other hands raised.
Okey-doke. We'll close our public comment period, and we'll move on into public hearings. Is 7A, that's correct, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Public hearings are a time for the petitioner to present his or her request and for the public to give input and voice their favor or opposition to the request. If you wish to speak, please come to the microphone, sign in, and state your name and address for the record. 7A, Town Code Amendment, Adcock Law Firm, PA, Cross Access, CTA 2019-06. More information about this agenda item will be presented by Town Manager Mitchell.
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this agenda item is to consider a proposed text amendment to the Town Code of Ordinances, Part 9 Land Development Ordinance, Article M, Thoroughfares, Drainage, and Utility Standards, Section 9-1606F and 9-1655 to revise language pertaining to cross-access. The town's land development ordinance currently requires cross-access between adjacent lots for the purposes of emergency service expediency, service of public utilities, and to permit cross-traffic between parcels in an effort to improve mobility and reduce main road congestion. Cross-access is currently required regardless of land use or zoning. Discussion regarding the requirement of cross-access to all adjacent parcels without exception for land use incompatibility has been ongoing between the petitioner and town staff. The petitioner, John B. Adcock, on behalf of Hilltop Free Will Baptist Church of Fuquay-Varina, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and the St. Raphael of Brooklyn Orthodox Mission, is requesting to amend the ordinance related to cross-access requirements. While town management and staff support amending this standard to include parameters for specific exemptions to the cross-access requirements, amendment to the extent requested by the petitioner's proposed language is not supported. The Land Development Ordinance serves as a document that applies to many situations and has been developed to be reasonable and in the best interest of the public. Staff believe that the petitioner's proposed language overly relaxes the standard and the intent thereof. Therefore, staff and management have worked with the petitioner to come up with a mutually agreeable amendment on two portions of the Land Development Ordinance, which are outlined herein to your agenda materials. Specifically, Section 1, Article M, this section has been entirely rewritten to provide clarity to both Sections 9-1606F and 9-1655. A more thorough understanding of the expectations for cross-access has been outlined in this amendment. Additionally, exceptions to the cross-access requirement have been provided where they were not provided previously. Both management and staff and the petitioner feel that these revisions are necessary in order to increase the ease of use and enforcement of the Land Development Ordinance. Management and staff are recommending approval of CTA 2019-06. It is reasonable and in the best interest of the public as it improves upon the Land Development Ordinance's intent to modernize, provide sustainability, and allows for ease of use and enforcement, specifically with regard to the town's current standards. At the May 18th regular meeting, the Planning Board unanimously recommended or voted to recommend approval to the Town Board, finding it reasonable and in the best interest of the public for those reasons I've just identified. There is no fiscal note to report on this as it is a Town Code amendment. The recommendation to you this evening is to first conduct a public hearing, followed by a motion to approve CTA 2019-06, an amendment to the Town Code of Ordinances Part 9 Land Development Ordinance as presented and recommended by Town staff. The text amendment improves upon the Land Development Ordinance and is reasonable and in the best interest of the public for those reasons identified by management and staff. I'm happy to answer any questions the board might have either before or after the public hearing.
And you feel very good about this?
I do, yes, sir. We've worked this for quite a long time, and I do believe that this improves our Land Development Ordinance, makes it more clear to understand as to what is an allowable and exception and what is not, and I think it'll make it easier for the public and for the town to manage.
And the planning board, did this go through a process?
It did go through a process with the planning board, several meetings, in fact, and it culminated in their recommendation on May 18th.
Okie doke. All right. The hearing is now open. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of this town code amendment? Scott, do you have anybody?
No, sir, I have no hands raised.
Okay. Does anyone wish to speak in opposition to this town code amendment?
No hands raised, Mayor.
Okay. And the hearing is now closed. Any discussion by the board? And if not, what is the pleasure of the board? This has been thoroughly vetted for several months now.
It has.
And it certainly would carry my recommendation to move it on forward. And I'd entertain a motion.
Mayor, make a motion to recommend this approved by staff, recommended by staff.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we go to 7B, zoning map amendment. William Barker Construction Group, 2001, 2003, 201, 203, 205, 207 East Ransom Street, REZ 2020-06. More information about this agenda item will be presented by Town Manager Mitchell.
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this agenda item is to consider a requested zoning map amendment for a total of 6.26 acres located at 201, 203, 205, and 207 East Ransom Street from the Office and Institutional O&I Zoning District to the Residential High Density Conditional Zoning District, RHD, CZD, and the corresponding land use plan amendment from Town Center Residential, TCR, to multifamily residential, MFR. The subject properties are located in the town's corporate limits. 3 of the 4 parcels are currently the site of a multifamily residential buildings with a total of 36 apartment units. The 4th parcel is undeveloped and forested. The zoning map amendment petition requests approval of the Residential High Density Conditional Zoning District, RHD CZD, which is intended to permit proposed residential development in existing single-family dwelling units, duplexes, triplexes, and quadplex residential uses, and to provide for multifamily high-density urban residential zoning lot development. The petitioner has requested the following condition for permitted uses be made applicable to the subject properties. The following use classification groups shall be excluded from consideration as uses on the subject properties with this zoning map amendment petition: assembly, community services, government facilities and services, medical offices and facilities, places of worship, utilities, communication, public lodging, retail sales and services, vehicle equipment, manufactured home sales and services. These are the uses that the petitioner is proposing not be allowed with this zoning map amendment. The petitioner has requested that the following site-specific condition be made applicable to the subject properties: a maximum density of 12 dwelling units per acre. Surrounding properties are primarily residential with a mix of densities, but also some remain undeveloped. The Bailey Place apartment complex is east of the subject properties, and individual single-family homes are located to the north, south, and west. Additionally, to the west is an undeveloped property owned by the Emmanuel Holiness Church. The 2035 Community Vision Land Use Plan calls for the Town Center residential TCR classification at the subject properties. The TCR classification calls for a property to support a mix of densities from medium to high density in proximity to the two downtown districts. Although the requested zoning district is not consistent with the 2035 Community Vision Land Use Plan classification, the petitioner has included a land use plan amendment along with the zoning map petition, which I'll describe a little later on. As it relates to utilities, public water and sewer are available to serve the subject properties. The subject properties have access to East Ransom Street and Dickens Street, which are classified by the 2035 Community Transportation Plan as local streets. The petitioner held the required neighborhood meeting on May 20th of this year via a web meeting, a virtual meeting. The meeting report was provided to you in your agenda materials, and town staff takes no position as to its content. The petitioner is requesting a land use plan amendment to the multifamily residential MFR classification. As previously described, this classification is incompatible with the petitioner's request of RHD-CZD. The current classification is incompatible. The petitioner is requesting an amendment to the 2035 land use plan that classifies the subject property as multifamily residential, which is better suited to accommodate the current and proposed to be continued use of multifamily residential. This amendment supports the land use plan's recommendation, LU4, encouraging infill development and redevelopment inside the town limits, which encourages the use and reuse of properties in the town limit to promote their highest and best use. Additionally, this amendment supports H3, don't lose affordability, for similar reasons. As such, the requested land use plan amendment is consistent with the land use plan and its vision. The land use plan amendment, if approved, would allow for the site to be redeveloped more consistently and appropriately as it relates to the proposed use and surrounding area. Management and staff are recommending approval of the proposed zoning map amendment with corresponding land use plan amendment. It is consistent with the 2035 Community Vision Land Use Plan vision and is reasonable in the best interest of the public for a number of reasons. First, again, although the requested zoning map amendment is not consistent with the current 2035 land use plan classification of town center residential, the petitioner has opted to request a change of that land use plan to multifamily residential, which is more appropriate to the current use, proposed use, and the location. Second, the requested zoning map amendment is consistent with the 2035 Community Vision Land Use Plan's recommendations of encouraging infill development and not losing affordability. And third, the requested zoning map amendment would better conform to the surrounding uses and provide for the ability to better develop the property for its intended use. At the June 15th, 2020 regular meeting of the Planning Board unanimously voted to recommend approval, finding it reasonable and in the best interest of the public for those reasons I've identified this evening. There is no fiscal note to report on this, as it is a zoning map amendment request. The recommendation to you this evening is to conduct a public hearing, followed by a motion to approve REZ 2020-06, a zoning map amendment at 201, 203, 205, and 207 East Ransom Street from the Office and Institutional Zoning District to the Residential High Density Conditional Zoning District, and the corresponding land use plan amendment from Town Center Residential, TCR, to Multifamily Residential, MFR. The proposed zoning map amendment with corresponding land use plan amendment is consistent with the 2035 Community Vision Land Use Plan vision and are both reasonable and in the best interest of the public for those reasons I've identified this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions that the board has, either before or after the public hearing. And as is customary with all agenda items, I am submitting this agenda item, abstract and supporting documents into the official record of the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. The hearing is now open. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of this zoning map amendment? Scott?
Mayor, I have, hold on, we have one hand just raised. Danny Howell, please unmute your mic.
Danny, go right ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Danny Howell, 2904 Plaza Place, Raleigh. I am Danny Howell with Real Engineering. I am the engineer of record for the owner, Mr. Barker. And I just wanted to thank Mr. Mitchell for a beautiful, a brilliant summary of the project. And I just want to let you guys know that we are here, both the owner and I are both present if you have any questions for us.
I think that we're pretty good about it, but say hello to William, Mayor. I hadn't talked to him
Yes, we'll do.
in a long time, but glad to have you with us this evening.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Does anyone else wish to speak in favor of the zoning map amendment?
I have no other hands raised, Mayor.
Okay. Does anyone wish to speak in opposition of the zoning map amendment?
No hands are raised, Mayor.
Thank you. The hearing is now closed. Is there any discussion by the board? And if not, what is the pleasure of the board? And it would carry my recommendation as well as town staff's and the planning.
Manager, I have a couple questions, Mayor.
Okay, go right ahead.
I'm assuming this is a continuation of Hillside Court Apartments.
That's the plan, my understanding.
So the only condition on here, and we've been talking a lot recently about conditions and different projects and things that were built across town. The only condition here is 12 units.
That's right. My understanding is that they intend to build a similar product and look to what's currently there.
So often developers have volunteered conditions up in situations like this, even if their intentions may be to build the same thing. Why is this case unique than any of the others that we've seen brought against us?
Yeah, we've talked really more about those types of conditions as it relates to, it's a good question you've asked, and we've spent more focus talking about those as it relates to single-family residential development, some townhomes as well. We really have not gotten into a discussion too much historically on conditions with multifamily apartment units. However, that's not to say that we shouldn't. In fact, after some of the more recent projects have been built in town, although they're of high quality and they look good, there are probably some things that could have been done to
Voluntarily, of course.
voluntarily to have been more aesthetically appealing. Exactly.
And I understand that here, but and obviously I'm probably the only one that has any thoughts on that. But to me,
I think if it was a entirely new project, we would have likely had those conversations. But being that there are existing units there, and it's our understanding that it's the developer or the builder's intent to essentially mirror what's there now in terms of product material, so it blends in and matches.
And that makes sense, and I can't imagine them doing anything different there, but if that's going to start being the direction, then I think there's lots of other cases that needs to be taken into account too when adjacent projects or continuations of projects are being done. You have something to compare against versus putting it right then, because we're moving to a different direction then.
Continuation of a project versus a new build in a existing neighborhood, I think are two differentiating things.
That's right.
But this is also a different piece of land that is being attached to this project, so no different than other projects by some people out there, such as, for instance, like recently we talked about Gala Construction in Lincoln Heights was the most recent one that we talked about at a meeting, and it was a lot of conversation there on what was going to be built there and what the gentleman was required to do and what he voluntarily required himself to do. And so no different than here. That man had a track record. These people have a track record here, but it does not appear to me that we're holding everybody to the same standards.
Well, again, I think multifamily, we have some opportunity to revisit that in the future. I think we've been pretty consistent with single-family, townhomes, things of that nature. I think we've been very consistent with those, but multifamily has been a differentiator, and that's something we can look at.
And some apartment complexes, and beauty's an eye of a beholder, but some of them in town have been beautiful buildings, and other ones have been ones that the public's not been impressed with either at the same time.
Well, and just to give you an example, some of the newer ones that are beautiful, one example might be that we consider in the future is that not every building be the same color, right? Just to provide some character and some variation to it. I think that's something we have identified since some of these new apartment complex developments have been built, the newer ones. They're of great quality and they're very nice, but they all look the same. And so the character is not necessarily really there. And so that's something we've identified in the future as multifamily projects continue to develop. That might be something we discuss with them as are you willing to offer that as a voluntary condition?
And every one of these look the same also. So then
They would.
In this case, we're wanting them to build something back that looks the same.
We are, because they've got existing already there. In the case of some of the previous projects I mentioned, they were new builds, and so there was an opportunity there to build in some character where.
At the end of the day, they're voluntary conditions, and this is all they've volunteered.
right.
So understood. Okay, thank you, Manager.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? You know, one other tidbit that I'll throw in there, this is where Patty and I moved 47, almost 48 years ago.
Yeah.
This was our first home in Fuquay-Varina, was this apartment kind of complex. It was apartment 2A, 201 East Ransom Street.
There you go.
There you go.
I will add just one thing to piggyback on Mayor Pro Tem's comments. One of the things that is a little bit differentiating between multifamily and single family in our code is we actually do have facade requirements on multifamily written into the code that are not existent for single family. And so that does automatically hold, in terms of materials and things of that nature, multifamily projects to a higher standard.
So are they allowed, because it does make sense to me to be building the same thing they already have there. I'm not advocating against it, just simply inquiring. Are they allowed to build their same building under those facade rules, or they have to build a wholly total?
They'll have to build they will be able to get as close as possible. There may be some variation and tweaks to it based on our current code.
And I think that's an example that the town has to, or the board has to be able to figure out a way that when you have something like this is added, because it would look the best to match than build something completely random and not matching it at the same
That's right.
time. And so that's,
I think they'll come very close to mirroring what's there, but there may be some variation just by the nature of our code.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion then.
Mr.
Mayor,
Mayor?
go ahead. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I'd motion that we approve REZ 2006, a zoning map amendment at 201, 203, 205, and 207 East Ransom Street from the O&I zoning district to the residential high district conditional zoning district and the corresponding land use plan amendment from the town center residential to multifamily residential. The proposed map amendment with corresponding land use plan amendment is consistent with the 2035 community vision land use plan and are both reasonable in the best interest of the public for the reasons identified by management and staff.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we move to 7C, voluntary annexation petition, Wake County Board of Education, E49, located at 1201 and 1291 Bowling Road and 1121 South Main Street, ANX 2020-07. More information about this agenda item will be presented by Town Manager Mitchell.
Thank you, Mayor. And as I'm loading this up on my computer, I do just want to make the board aware, and I guess the public's benefit as well who's listening. A lot of our technology is dependent on reliable access to high-speed internet and things of that nature. We do have a storm approaching, and so if for some reason the meeting checks out, we will do our best to get it up as quickly back as possible, but we'll keep moving forward while we've got it working. The purpose of this agenda item is to consider an annexation ordinance extending the corporate limits of the town of Fuquay-Varina following receipt of a petition for voluntary annexation to include property owned by the Wake County Board of Education E49 containing a total of approximately 80.96 acres. The property contains road access, or has road access, at 1201, 1291 Bowling Road and 1121 South Main Street. The property is contiguous to the town's corporate limits. Water and sewer is available to the property, and the town clerk has certified that the petition was sufficient and meets the requirements prescribed by the North Carolina General Statutes. The present total value of the property is $5,028,184. The recommendation to you this evening is first to conduct a public hearing, followed by a motion to adopt an annexation ordinance extending the corporate limits of the town of Fuquay-Varina to include property owned by the Wake County Board of Education E49, annexation petition ANX 2020-07, as presented and recommended. I'm happy to answer any questions the board has, either before or after the public hearing. And again, I'm submitting the agenda abstract and supporting documents into the official record of the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. The hearing is now open. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of this voluntary annexation petition?
Yes, sir, Mayor. We have Glenda Top has her hand raised. Glenda, please unmute your mic.
Glenda, go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, this is Glenda Top at 4139 Garden Lake Drive in Raleigh. I'm representing the Wake County School Board, and we would ask the board to support this annexation, and it is in conjunction with the next item on your agenda, which is the approval of the rezoning and land use plan amendment for a Wake County school, and would be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're good, but thank you for participating.
My pleasure.
Does anyone else wish to speak in favor of this voluntary annexation petition?
Mayor, we have no other hands raised.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Does anyone wish to speak in opposition to this voluntary annexation petition?
Mayor, I see no hands raised.
Thank you, Scott. The hearing is now closed. Is any discussion by the board? And if not, what is the pleasure of the board?
Mayor, make a motion to approve as recommended by staff.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We move on to 7D, zoning map amendment. Glenda S. Toppy and Associates, 1201 and 1291 Bowling Road, and 1125 and 1121 South Main Street, REZ 2020-07. More information about this agenda item will be presented by Town Manager Mitchell.
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this agenda item is to consider a requested zoning map amendment for a total of 81.664 acres located at 1201 and 1291 Bowling Road and 1125 and 1121 South Main Street from the residential agricultural RA and heavy industrial HI zoning districts to the office and institutional conditional zoning district O&I CZD, and the corresponding land use plan amendment from small scale commercial SSCC and small lot residential SLR and civic and institutional CIV to entirely civic and institutional CIV land use. 3 of the 4 parcels are located in the town's ETJ or extraterritorial jurisdiction, and the 4th is within the town's corporate limits. The southeasternmost parcel is the site of the town's decommissioned Kenneth Creek wastewater treatment plant that the town recently sold to the Wake County Public School System. The zoning map amendment petition requests approval of the office and institutional conditional zoning district, O&I CZD. The zoning district is intended to permit public uses as well as professional and general office and institutional uses with public utilities. The petitioner has requested the following condition pertaining to permitted uses be made applicable to the subject properties. The following use classification groups, shall be excluded from consideration as uses on the subject property. Public and civic uses. These include uses such as financial institutions and medical and office facilities. Commercial uses. Examples here would be public lodging, retail sales and services, and residential uses. So these classification groups would be excluded from consideration under the subject property zoning map amendment. Surrounding properties are primarily residential, but additionally vacant, agricultural, and religious uses. More specifically, future and existing single-family residential structures occupy the properties to the north as a part of the South and Main and Phillips Points subdivisions, and to the south and southeast as parts of the Thays Mill and Neal's Crossing subdivisions. The Faith Missionary Baptist Church occupies property to the southwest. The 2035 Community Vision Land Use Plan calls for the small-scale commercial center, small lot residential, and civic and institutional land use classifications at the subject properties. Although the requested zoning district is not consistent with the 2035 land use plan classifications, the petitioner has included a land use plan amendment along with this zoning map petition. Public water and sewer are available to serve the subject properties and will be installed with future development. The subject properties are located along and have access to South Main Street, Bowling Road, and Kenneth Branch Drive. Bowling Road and Kenneth Branch Drive are classified as local streets by the town's 2035 Community Transportation Plan. South Main Street is classified as a 120-foot right-of-way by the town's CTP. This street is identified as a 4-lane median divided road with side paths, and it's currently a 2-lane road. The petitioner held a required neighborhood meeting on May 21st, 2020 via virtual meeting, and the meeting report was provided to you in your agenda materials. Town staff takes no position as to its content. The petitioner is requesting a land use plan amendment to the civic and institutional classification across the entirety of the subject properties. The classifications that currently exist are incompatible with the proposed O&I CZD zoning district. This request amendment is justified and reasonable for a number of reasons. First, the 2035 Community Vision Land Use Plan describes civic and institutional classification as land developed to support a building or complex of buildings that serve a public purpose. Second, the recommendation CF3, safeguard our access to quality education, underscores the importance of ensuring the future of quality education in the area. And finally, third, the civic and institutional classification better conforms to the surrounding land uses and provides a reasonable and acceptable transition to the school from adjacent residential uses. Management and staff are recommending approval of the proposed zoning map amendment and corresponding land use plan amendment. Both are consistent with the 2035 Community Vision Land Use Plan vision and are reasonable and in the best interest of the public for a number of reasons. First, again, although the requested zoning map amendment is not consistent with the 2035 Community Vision Land Use Plan classification of small-scale commercial center and small lot residential, the petitioner has opted to request a change of land use plan to all civic and institutional, which would be more conducive to the petitioner's request of the O&I CZD zoning district. Second, the requested zoning map amendment is consistent with the 2035 Community Vision Land Use Plan's recommendation of CF3, safeguarding our access to quality education. And third, the requested zoning map amendment would better conform to the surrounding uses and provide a reasonable transition to the subject property from the adjacent residential neighborhoods. At the June 15th, 2020 regular meeting of the Planning Board unanimously voted to recommend approval, finding it reasonable in the best interest of the public for those reasons I've identified this evening. There's no fiscal note to report on this, as it is a zoning map amendment and land use plan amendment. The recommendation to the Town Board this evening is to first conduct a public hearing, followed by a motion to approve REZ 2020-07, a zoning map amendment at 1201 and 1291 Bowling Road and 1125 and 1121 South Main Street from the residential agricultural RA and heavy industrial HI zoning districts to the office and institutional conditional zoning district, and the corresponding land use plan amendment to all civic and institutional. The proposed zoning map amendment and corresponding land use plan amendment is consistent with the 2035 land use plan vision, and both are reasonable and in the best interest of the public for those reasons I've identified this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions that the board has, either before or after the public hearing, and I am submitting the agenda abstract and supporting documents into the official record of the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. The hearing is now open. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of this zoning map amendment?
Yes, sir, Mayor. We have Ms. Glenda Top again.
Okay. Glenda, please come on.
Good evening. Thank you again. It's Glenda Top, 4139 Garden Lake Drive, Raleigh, North Carolina, representing the Wake County School Board. The manager has done an excellent job going over the request. So I'll just add, would like to ask for the board's support. I'm here to answer questions, as are other members from the school system. And we all would like to thank the planning staff and everyone for all the help they have given us through this process, particularly since we are all navigating through a new day virtually. But again, it's been a pleasure working with everybody, and we're here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Glenda. Anyone else that wishes to speak in favor of the zoning map amendment?
Mayor, I see no other hands raised.
Thank you, Scott. Does anyone wish to speak in opposition to this zoning map amendment?
I have no hands raised, Mayor.
Thank you, Scott. The hearing is now closed. Any discussion by the board? And if not, what is the pleasure of the board?
Manager, I have a question, Mayor.
Okay.
What is, recently a high school was built in Fuquay-Varina, I know traffic. The design of it caused humongous amount of traffic, nightmare, and students attending school and parents were extremely upset with how Wake County designed that school. What input will staff have on this location right here, and what voluntary road improvements is Wake County doing?
Well, the road improvements that they will be doing will be consistent with our community transportation plan. There are no additional above the that have been discussed at the current
The
moment.
Bowling Road and 401, what are the properties adjacent to it, they'll do those road improvements there? At one point, there was discussion that schools no longer had to do anything.
Well, that's right. If it touches the school's property, they would have to make an improvement. If it's a direct access to their campus. Outside of that, they have no obligation.
And they pay for that, or does the town pay for that?
If it's on a state road, the state would pay for it. State would be responsible for paying for it. If the school system did not, the town would not.
The town does not have to pay for that stuff right there.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of input will staff have with?
We'll
the design
certainly be able to sit
stacking?
down and have input on site plan and design, and I think the school is very open to that. They've learned from some of the experience there with Willow Spring High School, and
That's a mistake we can't have twice. The public is
That-
not going to have that with Wake County messing up a design on something, so.
that's right.
Ultimately, staff will have input, and then it will come back to this board to approve or disapprove.
Yeah, the board's approving site plans. That's right. They come back to the town board, so the board would have.
So if I don't have manager support and planning department support and fire department support and police department support on it, then it will not be built that way, correct?
That's right. I mean, ideally, the town board would
Yeah,
look for staff support
I
on
want to
those
make sure,
projects.
because it's a nightmare what they call us over there now. Okay.
You want
I'm glad to have a school, but not happy with some of the ways they have been built.
We want to make sure about the sidewalks as well. I think that sidewalks, once you get to this age of student, sidewalks will be a moving piece that will help with the school site for many, many years to come.
That's
It is a very walkable area, so that would be huge.
And
You're right,
packed.
Mayor.
Excuse me?
It's a very walkable area, you're right, so sidewalks will be huge.
And it's not only walkable now, but in the next, 50 years, it will be
Even more, yeah.
more walkable. And it's right in our town, and I think it'll be a great site. I really do, and we appreciate the Wake County school system, working with this site to allow it to be all it can be right here in the heart
Yeah,
of our
I think a
community.
lot of it is sitting down with the Wake County Public School System and coming up with a reasonable solution to both vehicular and pedestrian mobility. Again, the general statutes, as you alluded to, Mayor Pro Tem, they were modified and changed to not be in the favor of local municipalities. And so there are some things that we may end up discussing with the school that they may not see eye to eye on, and if we were to require it, it would put the onus on us to pay for it if we required it.
That's right.
If DOT required something and the school system didn't agree with it, it would put the onus on DOT to pay for it. But
Partnership.
it's a partnership, and I believe in the conversations that we've had thus far, and there's going to be future schools that the school system is going to need to partner with us on as well. The middle school over at Herbert Akins, the new elementary school, Hilltop Needmore. This won't be the last rodeo we have with the school system, so I do believe they'll come to the table with intentions to work collaboratively with
And
us.
site improvements can be the biggest thing, that versus off-site, because site is much more cost-effective to be done than having
Exactly.
off-site improvements done somewhere else.
Exactly.
Betty Parker's done a good job for us.
She has
here
worked
in
very well with us.
Fuquay-Varina, and we appreciate her, and appreciate the Wake County school system, too. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, I'll entertain a motion then.
Mayor Burton, I move that we approve REZ 2020-07, a zoning map amendment at 1201 and 1291 Bowling Road and 1125 and 1121 South Main Street as presented and recommended.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. This is a big deal. Thank you very much. And Glenda, thank you for being with us. Okay, we move to the next item. 7E, zoning map amendment. Par 5 Holding LLC, 7086 and 7088 Kenny Beck, and 1729 and 1733 NC 42 Highway. REZ 2020-08. More information about this agenda item will be presented by Town Manager Mitchell.
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this agenda item is to consider a requested zoning map amendment at 7086 and 7088 Kennebec Road and 1729 and 1733 NC 42 Highway from the Office and Institutional O&I Zoning District to the General Commercial Conditional Zoning District GC CZD, and the corresponding land use plan amendment from small-scale commercial center and large lot residential to entirely small-scale commercial center. The subject properties are located in the town's extraterritorial jurisdiction, ETJ, and the properties are currently the site of a single-family home and its associated outbuildings. The zoning map amendment petition requests approval of the General Commercial Conditional Zoning District, GC CZD. The zoning district is intended to permit a mix of high-intensity non-residential development of retail, office, institutional, employment centers, and service uses. The petitioner is requesting the following conditions applicable to the use of the subject properties. Only the following uses shall be permitted: banquet hall and cultural adaptive use, conference center, bank or credit union, medical offices, greenways, restaurants, food services and sales, office, business professional, bed and breakfast inn, indoor recreation, retail sales and services, bulk good retail, health club, spa, personal service, seasonal outdoor sales display, shopping center, vehicle parts and accessories, retail, accessory units, business incubator, flex space, and an animal hospital veterinary clinic. These are the uses that would only be allowed if this zoning condition were, or the zoning map amendment petition were approved. There are a lot of other permitted uses in the classification, the general commercial conditional zoning district classification that the petitioner has excluded, and that frankly would not make sense based on the size of these properties combined. Surrounding properties are a mix of commercial and medium density residential uses. To the north, south, west, and west lie single-family residential homes and undeveloped farmland. Across the intersection to the northeast lies the Willow Springs School Park, an extension of the Willow Springs Elementary campus. Additionally, to the east and southeast are multiple commercial properties and single-family homes beyond those. The 2035 Community Vision Land Use Plan calls for the small-scale commercial center and large lot residential classifications at the subject properties. The large lot residential classification calls for property that is typically formed as a neighborhood for a single-family detached home subdivision with uniform housing densities. The small-scale commercial center classification is consistent with the proposed zoning map amendment, although the requested zoning district is not consistent with a portion of the 2035 land use plan classification of large lot residential. The petitioner has included a land use plan amendment along with this zoning map petition. Public water is available to serve the subject property. Public sewer is not yet available at this time. The subject properties are located and have access to Kennebec Road and NC 42 Highway, the former of which is classified as a local street, and the latter of which is classified as a 120-foot right-of-way by the town's 2035 Community Transportation Plan. North Carolina 42 Highway is identified as a 4-lane median divided road with side paths. It is currently a 2-lane road. The petitioner held a required neighborhood meeting on May 21st via virtual meeting. The meeting report was provided to you in your agenda materials, and town staff takes no position as to its content. The petitioner is requesting a land use plan amendment to include the entire property under small-scale commercial center classification, which is better suited to accommodate the proposed use of commercial. This amendment supports the land use plan's recommendation of CF1 investing in existing growth areas, which encourages development along growth corridors, just like NC Highway 42. As such, the requested land use plan amendment is consistent with the 2035 land use plan and its vision. The land use plan amendment, if approved, would allow for the site to be redeveloped in a more consistent and appropriate manner as it relates to the proposed use and surrounding area. Management and staff are recommending approval of the proposed zoning map amendment with corresponding land use plan amendment, as they are consistent with the 2035 Community Vision Land Use Plan vision and reasonable in the best interest of the public for a number of reasons. Again, although the requested zoning map amendment is not consistent with the 2035 Community Vision Land Use Plan classification of large lot residential, the petitioner has opted to request a change of the land use plan to entirely small-scale commercial center, which is more appropriate to the proposed use and location. Second, the requested zoning map amendment is consistent with the 2035 Community Vision Land Use Plan's recommendation of CF1 investing in existing growth areas. And finally, conditions proposed by the petitioner effectively limit future development so that it is compatible with the surrounding area. At the June 15, 2020 regular meeting, the Planning Board voted unanimously to recommend approval, finding it reasonable in the best interest of the public for those reasons identified by staff. There's no fiscal note to report on this, as it is a zoning map and land use plan amendment. The recommendation to the Town Board this evening is to conduct a public hearing, followed by a motion to approve REZ 2020-08, a zoning map amendment at 7086 and 7088 Kennebec Road and 1729 and 1733 NC 42 Highway from the Office and Institutional Zoning District to the General Commercial Zoning District, CZD, Conditional Zoning District, and the corresponding land use plan amendment from small-scale commercial center and large lot residential to entirely small-scale commercial center. The proposed zoning map amendment and corresponding land use plan amendment are consistent with the 2035 Community Vision Land Use Plan vision, and both are reasonable in the best interest of the public for the reasons I've identified this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions that the board has, either before or after the public hearing, and I am submitting the agenda abstract and supporting documents into the official record of the town.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
Does anyone wish to speak in favor of the zoning map amendment? Scott?
Yes, sir. We have one hand raised. Kimberly Bozeman, please unmute your mic.
Kimberly, come right on.
Yes, this is Thomas Neville. Kimberly Bozeman is one of the assistants in my office.
Okay.
Again, my name is Thomas Neville.
Thank you, Thomas.
And I represent the, yes, sir. Represent the applicant, and I am a lawyer working out of Fayetteville. My address is 3610 Linden Road in Linden, North Carolina, about 30 minutes just south of y'all. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I don't really have much to add. We do believe that this is a good fit, both when you look at the specific property itself, the land use map, and the zoning map. Both a representative of the developer and the engineer are also present. If you have any questions of any of us, we'd be very happy to answer those. Again, we do feel that when you take into account the land use map, the zoning map, and the specific area, that this is a very good fit. So again, if you have any questions, please let us know.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. Anybody else, Scott?
No, sir. No more hands raised.
Okay. Does anyone wish to speak in opposition to this zoning map amendment?
I have no hands raised, Mayor.
Thank you, Scott. The hearing is now closed. Is there any discussion by the board? And if not, what is the pleasure of the board?
Mayor, make a motion to approve, recommend by staff.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we go to 7F, voluntary annexation petition, Cypress Homes Incorporated, located at 9220 and 9224 Fuquay Road, ANX 2020-08. More information about this agenda item will be presented by Town Manager Mitchell.
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this agenda item is to consider an annexation ordinance extending the corporate limits of the town of Fuquay-Varina following receipt of a petition for voluntary annexation of property owned by Cypress Homes Incorporated containing a total of approximately 1.485 acres. The property has road access at 9220 and 9224 Fuquay Road. The property is non-contiguous to the town's corporate limits. Water and sewer is available to the property. The town clerk has certified that the petition was sufficient and does meet all the requirements prescribed by the North Carolina General Statutes. The total present value of the property is $72,000. The action recommended to the town board this evening is to first conduct a public hearing, followed by a motion to adopt an annexation ordinance extending the corporate limits of the town of Fuquay-Varina to include property owned by Cypress Homes Incorporated, annexation petition ANX 2020-08 as presented and recommended. I'm happy to answer any questions the board has either before or after the public hearing, and I am submitting the agenda abstract and supporting documents into the official record of the town. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Adam. Does anyone wish to speak in excuse me, in favor of this voluntary annexation petition?
Yes, sir, Mayor. We have a phone caller. Phone number ending in 6587. Please go ahead and speak.
Please go ahead. 6587. Give us your name and address for the record.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. It's Wayne Malden with Malden Watkins Surveying, 1301 Broad Street here in Fuquay-Varina.
Well, to recognize that number.
Good evening.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Come on.
Yes, sir. Doing all right this evening. I think Mr. Mitchell has explained it all pretty well in his thing. These are two lots that have been sitting vacant for a while for septic reasons. And we put this petition together for Cypress Homes, and I'll be glad to try to answer any questions if you have them.
Wayne, I think we're good.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. And does anybody else wish to speak in favor of the voluntary annexation petition?
I see no other hands raised, Mayor.
Thank you, Scott. Does anyone wish to speak in opposition to this voluntary annexation petition?
I see no hands raised, Mayor.
Thank you, Scott. The hearing is now closed. Any discussion by the board, and if not, what is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Mayor, motion we adopt the annexation ordinance extending the corporate limits of the town of Fuquay-Varina to include property owned by Cypress Homes, Annex 2020-08, as presented and recommended.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 7G, voluntary annexation petition, Gala Construction LLC, located at 5605 and 5609 Hilltop Road, ANX 2020-09. More information about this agenda item will be presented by Town Manager Mitchell.
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this agenda item is to consider an annexation ordinance extending the corporate limits of the town of Fuquay-Varina following receipt of a petition for voluntary annexation of property owned by Gala Construction LLC containing a total of approximately 2.469 acres. The property has road access at 5605 and 5600 Hilltop Road. The property is non-contiguous to the town's corporate limits. Water service is available to the property, but sewer is not yet available. The petitioner has signed a declaration of annexation agreement waiving town sewer services, excuse me. The town clerk certified the petition was sufficient and met the requirements prescribed by the North Carolina General Statutes. The present total value of the property is $119,916. The action for the town board recommended this evening is to conduct a public hearing, followed by a motion to adopt the annexation ordinance to extend the corporate limits of the town of Fuquay-Varina to include property owned by Gala Construction LLC, annexation petition 2020-09, and to approve the declaration of annexation agreement as presented and recommended. I'm happy to answer any questions that the board has, either before or after the public hearing, and I am submitting the agenda abstract and supporting documents into the official record of the town.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
The hearing is now open. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of this voluntary annexation petition?
I see no hands raised, Mayor.
Thank you, Scott. Does anyone wish to speak in opposition to this voluntary annexation petition?
And there are no hands raised.
Thank you. The hearing is now closed. Any discussion by the board? And if not, what is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to adopt the annexation ordinance LLC ANX 2020-09 as presented and recommended.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We move to the consent agenda, item 8. What is the board's pleasure on the items on the consent agenda?
Mayor, make a motion to approve consent agenda items A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H.
Second.
There's no H that I know of.
Or second
I
to G.
tricked y'all.
Second to G.
Minus H.
Minus H, okay. Commissioner Harris caught that. He's a slick one over here. All right. You got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now we're going to move to 9A.
10A.
10A. Okay, yep. Let me do that. Preliminary subdivision plat, The Oaks at Kenneth Creek, SUB PR 2019-05. More information about this agenda item will be presented by Town Manager Mitchell.
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this agenda item is to consider a preliminary subdivision plat submitted by the firm McKim and Creed called the Oaks at Kenneth Creek subdivision located at 1049 Leatherstone Lane. The submitted preliminary subdivision, the Oaks at Kenneth Creek, is located again at 1049 Leatherstone Lane on 12.68 acres in the residential medium density zoning district. The preliminary subdivision plat proposes 20 residential lots meeting the standards for conventional subdivision developments. The minimum lot size permitted is 10,000 square feet. The minimum lot size proposed in this subdivision plan is 15,047 square feet, with the average lot size being 19,876 square feet. Although not required, there is 1.87 acres of open space provided. Vehicular access to the project area is provided via a continuation of public streets, Leatherstone Lane and Stable Fern Drive from the adjacent subdivision, the Ridge is at Kenneth Creek. Both Leatherstone Lane and Stable Fern Drive are classified as a 50-foot right-of-way on the town's 2035 Community Transportation Plan. Public water and sewer are available to serve the subject properties and will be installed by the developer. The proposed preliminary subdivision plat meets all town requirements, and as such, management and staff are recommending approval. At the June 15th, 2020 regular meeting of the Planning Board found the subdivision plat consistent with town requirements and voted unanimously to recommend approval to the town board. There's no fiscal note to present to you on this particular matter, and so the recommendation this evening is to consider by motion to approve the Oaks at Kenneth Creek preliminary subdivision plat SUB PR 2019-05 as presented and recommended. I'm happy to answer any questions the board has, and I am submitting the agenda, abstract, and supporting documents into the official record of the town.
Okay. Any comments from anybody? Okay, I would entertain a motion then.
Mayor, so moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we move to item 10B, Town Park Restrooms Status Report. More information about this agenda item will be presented by Town Manager Mitchell.
Thank you, Mayor. And while Scott loads this presentation up, I'll make a few comments. The purpose of this agenda item is to provide an update to the town board as requested at our last town board meeting on a plan for constructing permanent restrooms at various town parks. On June 16th, I shared an update on recent bids for a package of 2 small public restrooms at the James A. Campbell Park and Willow Lakes Town Park. The total low bid price for the 2 restrooms was $320,000, which would have required an appropriation of about $256,000 more dollars in recreation unit fees that were not accounted for in the fiscal year 2020 budget or in the fiscal year 21 through 25 5-year plan. And so for that reason, I was not in position to recommend the award of a restroom bid, and recommended to the town board that we revisit the assumptions and the potential capacity for discussion of reprioritization of the 5-year plan to accommodate additional permanent public restrooms at multiple town parks. On June 16th, at our town board meeting, the town board requested that this discussion be further taken up at tonight's meeting. So there are included in your agenda abstract is a summary of town parks that have permanent restrooms, temporary or portable restrooms, and parks that have no restrooms. And quickly, just to kind of review that, the park facilities with permanent restrooms include South Park. There we have 2 restrooms at the ball fields and at the splash pad. Falcon Park, Action Park, Honeycutt Road Park, Carol Howard Johnson Environmental Park, Fleming Loop Park, and there, the new renovated park, there are 3. A large restroom with co-joined concessions, and then 2 family restrooms that are joined with storage buildings. And they're on different ends of the park. Valentine School Park, and this is with a joint use agreement with the Wake County Public School System, and the Hilltop Needmore Town Park and Preserve. There are 2 public restrooms on the trail system there. Park facilities with portable toilets include the Action Park tennis courts. There is a permanent restroom in the vicinity of the ball fields, but not at the tennis courts themselves. The Herbert Akins joint use agreement temporary site, and this will no longer be available when the middle school construction begins the late summer of 2020. Banks Road Park, the James A. Campbell Park, the Austin Ridge Park, and the Fuquay-Varina Downtown Dog Park. And then there are some public park facilities with no restroom facility at all, permanent or temporary. That includes Library Park and Ashworth Park. There is an indoor restroom available during museum hours, which are pretty limited. The Fuquay Mineral Spring Park and the William Freeman Park, which is a site that is not owned by the town. And so I've prepared a presentation that should be on a screen in front of you, I think. Maybe this one right here.
Yes.
That I just wanted to go over with the town board.
One of the items in there, Adam, I think the town board felt like that it was way too expensive.
That's correct. $320,000 is about
And we were looking at spending,
$85,000. We'll go over that in just a moment. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to speak to that.
Yes, sir,
Just to
please.
respond to that. What makes the situation with James Campbell Park so different is that years ago, when the Fuquay Community Redevelopment Corporation was moving forward to redevelop the area around Fuquay, the old Fuquay Consolidated School, part of the agreement that the county made, along with the movement to remove some of the blight that was in the area, that the county would purchase property and then give that property to the town, which is historically what happened with James A. Campbell Park. And part of the motivation, the purpose for that was to enhance the community and to improve the community overall. So James A. Campbell's situation, as far as the park is concerned, is somewhat different from the historical perspective than the other town parks. James A. Campbell Park had a unique purpose, which was to upgrade that particular area at the time, along with the efforts for redevelopment. So I don't want it to get confused that this was just similar to any of the other development around town parks. This was a unique project, and part of the motivation and the advocacy for the restrooms is to continue and to complete that project that was initially started, that was agreed upon by the town that it would do. So your report is going to be fine. It's going to outline different town parks. But this particular park and the history and the situation and purpose of this park is different and unique. I want to make that comment.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Commissioner Harris, because that whole area was redeveloped. There, many houses were removed, and it's in an area that was kind of blighted, and Wake County did work with the town in order to for us to have that piece of property given to us. And I think that's a good, that's absolutely a good comment. But what we want to do is try to move forward and get this job done that we've been trying for, I don't know, about 3 years now.
No, it's been, I have to speak to this because I'm sort of passionate about this issue.
That's all right. Please do.
It's been longer than that. It's been over 10 years. And this has been in the 5-year plan, and this project has been kept kicking back and back as far as a priority is concerned. And I think it's reflective, perhaps, of an attitude that maybe that area is not as important as other areas of the town because it has not gotten done yet, and for the concern of price and cost. When you look at other park areas, I question, I don't know if we've ever really looked at the cost as far as the positive utility or impact of a park. So I'm wanting us to try to look at this and not lump it with various other parks because of the uniqueness of the park. That's my whole point, and I don't want it to be overshadowed just by lumping it together with all other parks. Because I think historically this is somewhat different.
Yeah, I don't think that it was meant to be lumped together, but it was requested by a commissioner that we look at all of our parks, and it's probably a reasonable time, to look at all of the parks. I don't think that anybody in this room is against what you're talking about, Commissioner Harris. I think that we're very much wanting to accomplish this, and that's where we're trying to get to tonight. And I believe we'll get there, or get very close to it.
Well, I don't think anybody's against. I think there's a level of apathy or inaction that historically, has brought this to this point, where we have people, in regards to the public comment tonight, looking at the issue and the utility of this park and how you have people, children and people who aren't as mobile, and with the expectation that they don't have the ability to relieve themselves at a public park. So I think we've gotten to that point wherein this is crucial and is critical relative to all the other parks.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, but we've all been in this room and we've all had the opportunity for the last 10 years to say what we're saying tonight. And I think we're further along and we're going to try to get there on doing something that Mr. Campbell would be very proud of us for in this park setting, which, you know, today is kind of closer to the heart of our community, you know, than it used to be. It's sort of the heartthrob away from, you know, from right downtown.
Mayor, I think it's clear to management and staff that the board wants to put a bathroom at this park. I understood this presentation to be in conjunction talking about all parks, all bathrooms, and that I imagine at the end of this report we're going to come out with a plan for James A. Campbell to have a bathroom. But I think that it's fair that we got our status report sitting in front of us that's on the agenda, that we need to hear the status report at this time.
We're going to move forward with it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So we'll just kind of briefly go through the slide deck here, and I'll answer any questions. Again, I won't spend a whole lot of time here. I just went over this and while Scott was loading it up, but we do have current town park facilities that do have permanent brick and mortar restrooms, and those are listed on the screen here. I just verbally mentioned those a moment ago. And then we do have town parks that have either portable, non-brick and mortar restrooms. Those are the top 5 there listed. And then we do have some parks that have no restrooms at all, portable or brick and mortar.
Let me ask you this while you were doing those parks. I was thinking about the Hilltop Needmore Park. We have some bathrooms in that main building.
We do. There are restrooms, but that's not open to the public right now. There's only 2 restroom facilities that are open to the public presently.
How difficult would it be to open those?
Very.
Very difficult.
It would be very
It's
difficult.
not.
We can't do it right now because it doesn't meet code.
Okay.
So, but we do have funds in our town budget this year to bring that building up to code.
That's right.
Which we've got to
Okay.
go through
That's
a plan
another-
of design and
Yeah.
construction, and hopefully bids that fall within our budget parameters. And if that happens, those restrooms then become available to the
And
public.
that's kind of part of a process.
It is.
Okay, thank you.
That we will be working on in this current fiscal year. So, being that sort of the genesis of this presentation was out of our conversation at our last board meeting on the James A. Campbell Park, just as a little bit of a refresher, James A. Campbell Park, it's about 5.71 acres. It opened in 2010. After a $90,000 investment by the town. Again, as Commissioner Harris mentioned, the parkland was gifted to the town upon the commitment that the town would make improvements. Those improvements at the time in an improved master plan only included a park shelter and playground and small parking area. Those improvements did not include a restroom facility at that time. That came later in 2014 when the town adopted a 5-year facility master plan, which included the identification of a permanent restroom facility at the park. So picnic shelter, picnic tables, playground, fencing, signage, parking lot, and trash cans are what the amenities are at this time. And we're at in 2010. So in 2014, the town board adopted a comprehensive system-wide parks and recreation and cultural resources master plan. That was for the 5 years, 2015 through 2019. This included a James A. Campbell Park restroom. The original estimated cost was $60,000 based off of an in-house design. And I believe that it was identified in that 5-year plan, if I'm not mistaken, for the fiscal year 2018. We have since gone away from in-house designs to more professional architectural designs, and so the restroom that has been designed is what we call a small restroom prototype. This is it for the board's view and benefit. It includes a separate men's and women's restroom facility, as well as a storage and janitorial closet or storage area, as well as some additional non-conditioned storage space. The women's restroom has 2 stalls, 1 handicap accessible, a sink, and baby changing station, which we've included in all of our restroom prototypes. The men's room included a stall and a urinal, a sink, and a baby changing station as well. The engineer estimated cost was $85,000. So we bid this project twice. Let me actually back up there and go back. So it was programmed for fiscal year 2018. Commissioner Harris made a point that we're all aware of, that in 2018, as we were going through our budget workshop and identifying what our needs were, we were in the midst of a significantly expanding and growing youth athletics and youth sports program. We were seeing increases in participation and numbers unlike any in the years past for the town at that time. And so the town did make a conscious, at my recommendation, and the town board agreed at that time, that we would move back that restroom to fiscal year 2019 and instead invest in some much needed improvements and updates to existing parks that we program for youth sports and athletics. In fiscal year 2019, the restroom got moved back again. That was at the time frame that we were talking about accepting property from the Wake County for the former Crooked Creek Golf Course, and that coupled with additional investments in town parks that we program for youth athletics and youth sports, it was decided at that time that we were going to invest in those more pressing projects that we were getting a high utilization from.
I think also the splash pad.
Splash pad was sort of in that same
piece
time
of
frame
that
as well.
Time frame.
So we had reprioritized. And then in fiscal year 20, last fiscal year, the town board said we are going to commit to do this project, and we're going to put the $85,000 in the budget to do that, and that's what we did. And so then we bid the project. In February of 2014, we bidded it we put it out for bid by itself, singular restroom. This included some federal funds that we had gotten access to. I think we had gotten access to close to $23,000 in federal CDBG money, so that we were going to be able to spend less local dollars and be able to redistribute that to other projects in the future. Unfortunately, the lowest bid was $211,000, which was almost 3 times more than what our engineer estimate was for the project. The highest bid was $243,000. At that point, I recommended to the town board that we not award the contract at $211,000. It just didn't seem reasonable to pay that amount of money for what we don't believe that restroom should cost in materials and labor. And we went back with a different strategy, this time to go out for bid on 2 restrooms, the James A. Campbell Park restroom and the Willow Lakes restroom construction. As you know, new elementary school is being built across from South Lakes, North Lakes, soon to open, and a joint use agreement is in place between the town and the Wake County Public School System for a park out at that site. And we are going to be putting 2 ball fields, soccer ball fields, that we plan to program and have youth athletics and youth sports there. And so there is a need for a permanent restroom at that facility as well, and due to what it's estimated high utilization. And so we rebid the 2 restroom buildings, same prototypes, the small restroom prototype. We have 3 prototypes, small, medium, and large. This time 2 of them, and the lowest price bid came back at $320,000. And the highest bid was $541,000 for the 2 restrooms. So a little bit better price when you bid it with 2 versus 1. That comes out to about $160,000 or so, but still about double what our engineer estimate says that this it should cost to build this restroom.
You know, it's amazing the difference between the highest and the lowest.
Yeah.
Right there on that.
And that's a product of just it being a poor bidding environment right now, and public bidding is
Just busy,
everybody's busy. There's not a lot of hunger in the marketplace right now.
Well, the schools are building, you know, they're building 3 right here, or, you know, got 3 going.
So I had recommended at that time that let's just pump the brakes on this thing, try to come up with a different strategy. Again, the goal is to build a restroom at the James A. Campbell Park and other town parks that don't have permanent restrooms, but to do it in a way that makes sense financially. Right now, spending that type of money bears the question, is that responsible spending to pay double or maybe more than double of what we believe it should cost? So just as a reminder about our recreation unit fees, and this chart comes from, more or less, comes from the 5-year plan that I presented just a few months back. Our balance at the end of June 30th of 2019 was almost $9 million. We expect it last fiscal year to take in about $1.75 million. That's an unaudited number, but we're pretty close to that last fiscal year. And expending out $937,000. Leaving us a balance of about 2.7. And then the revenues projected in 21 and the expenses that are already budgeted and programmed in fiscal year 21 are reflected in the next 2 rows, leaving us with $1.4 million if everything goes according to plan at the end of fiscal year 21. And then we're showing revenues and planned expenditures from our 5-year plan for fiscal year 22. And it goes on down the line through fiscal year 25. If everything goes as planned, as the town board has adopted and programmed in our 5-year plan, and we don't reprioritize and we don't shuffle things around, and our revenues come in like we are expecting, we believe we would be at the end of 5 years somewhere around $2.3 million. And this does include putting back into the budget what we did not spend, or back into the fund balance what we did not spend on the James A. Campbell Park. So just a reminder, well, what makes up those planned expenditures for those individual fiscal years? In our 5-year plan for fiscal year 21 is a renovation of the bathroom at the Honeycutt Road Park, a very highly utilized park facility in terms of youth athletics and programming. The Honeycutt Park Field 3 irrigation, the Ballantyne School Field ball field lights, the downtown dog park shade structures, South Park bathroom renovation, not the new one that we built for the splash pad, but the old one at the ball fields, community center, redesign of the original section, Action Park restroom renovation. These renovations are happening at very highly utilized parks. Community Center and Senior Wing North design, Hilltop Needmore Town Park, and Preserve Clubhouse renovation. Mayor, that goes to your point earlier. Hidden Valley Greenway design and the Austin Ridge Greenway design. For fiscal year 22, it includes resurfacing of the gym floor at the community.
Let me go back to those greenways, if you would. They don't include any bathrooms or anything.
No, that's just the design, of an expanded greenway that we would one day construct if we got grant money or had the resources.
Okay.
That's going ahead and getting plans on a shelf so that we could quickly pull the trigger if a grant opportunity came available. The fiscal year 22, the gym floor resurfacing at the community center, the tennis court lights, the access control system at Action Park, the dugout replacement at Action Park, Carol Howard Johnson Environmental Park trail improvements and bridge replacement, and the Hilltop Needmore Town Park and Preserve Park Master Plan. Fiscal year 23, track resurfacing at South Park, track is getting pretty long in the tooth, and if anybody has seen the new, I know Commissioner Harris has, the new trail at the Fleming Loop Park, it's substantially in better quality because it's brand new, and so this would be bringing this one up to a new standard as well.
Is this going to be like the Fleming Loop?
It's going to be the existing footprint, just a resurfaced.
But like that of it, Fleming Loop?
It would be.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So fiscal year 23, the track resurfacing, Falcon Park dugout and score tower replacement, Action Park tennis court replacement, Community Center roof replacement, and the Community Center North Senior Center construction. And then fiscal year 24, here we begin talking about a playground replacement, and here we programmed in $85,000 for this small restroom prototype at Carol Howard Johnson Environmental Park. And then fiscal year 25 is just additional investment to be determined at the Hilltop Needmore Town Park and Preserve. And if all things go as planned in the first 4 fiscal years, we would have $2.3 million to use for the investment, continued investment in the additional Hilltop Needmore Town Park and Preserve improvements. So this was what was approved by the town board during our 5-year plan and budget process this year. So one option to consider here is designing a smaller prototype restroom than the 3 we have. Permanent restroom, brick and mortar, but a smaller prototype than the one we have for our neighborhood parks, like the James A. Campbell Park, like the Austin Ridge Park. Okay, those 2 parks are very similar in size. They're very similar in current amenities.
You're talking about having one bathroom in there that is like for handicap, just one stall.
So it would be a men's and women's restroom. It would not be a unisex restroom.
Yeah.
It would be a men's and women's restroom, but instead of 2 stalls or multiple urinals, it would, in the men's room, it would be 1 stall in each restroom, 1 handicap accessible stall in each restroom, 1 sink, and 1 baby changing station. We have talked with the designer who did the other 3 prototypes to ask what would it cost to design a neighborhood park prototype, if you will, a smaller neighborhood park prototype, $7,200, which we can incorporate into the fiscal year 21 budget. We've looked at that, and the biggest thing to note here is that the architect and engineer estimate that there would be about a 30%, or it should be about a 30% reduction in cost savings by going with a smaller prototype over the next step up. And so if we're looking at $160,000 is the lowest bid we got for 2 of the small ones, potentially bidding out 2 of a even smaller permanent restroom prototype might get us back in the neighborhood or close to the neighborhood, maybe around $100,000 or $110,000 with the savings that would be built in.
How quick would it take, say, this is an opportunity that we can use for James A. Campbell Park, and that was the first one at the top of the list, as we've been discussing. How quick could this process go through and get that bathroom started under construction?
So we've already pulled the trigger on getting the prototype design done because we do think there's some advantages.
You got the money there to
have that, and so we expect to have that design back within 60 days of. We pulled the trigger right before July 4th. So
the other bids that were already done on the other bathroom, from a time standpoint, the other bids that are already done, I imagine, are expired at this point anyway, so they have to be re-advertised and rebidded. So really the delta difference in the 2 is design time period for getting it constructed?
Yes, and we have elected to go through a formal bidding process on these, but because they are below I believe it's $300,000 threshold, we wouldn't necessarily have to go back for through an advertisement and formal bid. We could negotiate directly with general contractors that were licensed, insured, and bonded on any of the prototypes.
But what you
when we started talking
30% reduction anyway, And I kind of like the idea from a safety standpoint. If you've got those one stall bathrooms, you can lock them. If somebody goes in there to use the bathroom, they can lock the door. And I like that aspect.
I think you can see a difference also on this type here. I know since we started talking about this design, or I think at last meeting, or maybe I said something to you about this design, I can't remember, but also other contractors in the area, local contractors, for instance. I know I've talked to a few of them since our last meeting that have really expressed interest in getting involved, and I think we can see substantial cost savings by doing something like this, where some of our local contractors in Fuquay-Varina would get involved with that. I cannot bid on this. I'm on the town board, but I know if I was a local contractor, I'd be jumping up and down for excitement for this type of
We'd look forward
pricing.
to anybody you could send us, because we're
I've
trying.
sent several of them. I've been in touch with Jonathan last
And I'm
week.
going to talk about that in a moment.
He's got, Adam's got some of them here, so.
So the smaller prototype, again, it would be a men's and women's restroom, but instead of 2 stalls, it would be 1 stall, handicap accessible, sink, baby change. So basically, you eliminate a stall and a urinal, and you just have each restroom has a stall, and it eliminates the storage component that we had in our smaller design.
And it's also safer, Adam. You can lock that door. If
Yeah,
somebody
there are
goes-
some advantages. And you know, based on that, I would propose that we utilize that prototype in neighborhood parks. And we'll talk a little bit about that moving forward here. So, one of the things that was asked of me is put together a plan that can get us restrooms in our parks. And so I have done that with the assistance of our Assistant Town Manager, Mark Matthews, and our Parks Recreation Cultural Resources Director, Jonathan Cox. And that plan, although I'm not recommending this exactly at the moment, but that plan, from a budgeting standpoint, would be a James A. Campbell Park restroom and an Alston Ridge Park restroom. Again, very similar in scope and size of these two neighborhood parks in fiscal year 21. These are not budgeted. These are not programmed yet. Okay? This would be an action by the board or direction by the board to do this.
But we could go ahead and move it up. If you get them designed for that right, we could go ahead and move it up. It could be 2020.
No, fiscal year 21 is 2020.
Make that, I was going to say, make that clear for the public.
This year.
What we're in right now. This is, today is fiscal year 21 budget.
Correct.
And that's what I want to make sure the public understands. Listen, this is not saying
Fiscal
delay it
year
12 months.
21 ends June 30th of 21.
So this
Yes.
is 21.
That's right. We're
That's
in
right.
21 right now.
Somebody watching this could think this means delay another year, and that's not what we're,
No,
what's
what
trying to
I'm
do.
saying is, get a good plan, get a good price, and we move forward in fiscal year 21. Take a year off in 22, and in 23 we would come back and do a permanent new restroom at the Carol Howard Johnson Environmental Education Park, and then at the Willow Lakes Park. Take another year off in 24, come back in 25, permanent restroom at the Banks Road Park and at the Fuquay-Varina Downtown Dog Park, and then another year off, and then come back in 2027. This is a 7-year plan. If the town board wished to proceed forward, the small restroom prototype in the Fuquay Mineral Spring Park and at the Library Ashworth Park area. Now, the Library Ashworth Park would only be if there was not a proposed public restroom in the depot that they're planning to construct. Oop, let me hit my button here. So we have some options, okay? Option 1, which I'm not recommending, is build the James A. Campbell Park and Willow Lakes Park restroom as bid. If the contractor would still honor it, we'd have to go back at $320,000. That's $160,000 per restroom. Frankly, I think that we would be paying an overinflated price.
Could you still get that $27,000?
No, that bid was not based on any federal money. The contractors, the feedback we got is, we're not interested in having to jump through the federal reporting hoops to build a small park restroom.
Okay, all right.
We also could look at redesigning the James A. Campbell Park restroom like I talked about, and utilize the new design at other more smaller neighborhood parks like the Alston Ridge Park, Fuquay Mineral Spring Park, Fuquay-Varina Downtown Dog Park, and Library Ashworth Park. It would take us about 60 days to get this design back, which we've already put in motion. And Our hope is that we would get prices back that would be reflective of a 30% cost reduction from the bids that we were previously seeing. However, if we bid this thing out and we don't see that type of cost reduction, then we may wish to go back to the smaller restroom, which I don't think is necessary at these parks just because of utilization. But if we're getting the same prices for either model, you might as well get the bigger model. And third would be to just stick with our current 5-year plan. Don't program any of these restrooms that I've discussed, which is not what I'm recommending and not what I think the town board wants to do, and then come back at a later time and revisit how we're going to program in these restrooms. I'm not recommending that. I'm really more recommending option 2, which is let us go through the 60-day redesign, let us rebid out, and we could bid it or we could talk with contractors directly. And I do want to just make I want to make the board and the public aware that we are actually running dual tracks right now. We have got our engineer and architect designing a smaller prototype, and we have reached out to 4 general contractors whose names have been provided to us that have said to individuals in our community that they would be interested in seeing the plans for our current restroom prototype and giving a quote on a price that they felt like they could do the project for.
Can you tell us who they are?
I don't have their names off the top of my head, but I could tell you.
But they've been submitted to us.
They've been submitted to us because of the conversation that we've been having. Jonathan has talked personally with all 4 of those contractors. Jonathan has shared the design plans with all 4 of those contractors, and we are waiting to hear back from those 4 contractors on what they would build the current small restroom plan that we have previously bid out for. If they come back and say they'll do it for $85,000, well, you know, maybe we pull the trigger, maybe we still
in the bathroom.
That's right.
Get it done.
Okay, so we are running dual tracks. We are designing a smaller neighborhood park prototype that we think we'll see 30% savings from. We are also talking with contractors about the other prototype to see if they're willing to give a bid. We verified that these contractors are, are licensed general contractors, bonded and insured, so they would be able to do the project for us, the job for us. So my recommendation is that I'm using the wrong clicker here. My recommendation is that we make every reasonable and concerted effort to follow this plan and build these restrooms at our various town parks in these various fiscal years. Hopefully not at these various prices, but I'm just putting a placeholder number there.
Where does Austin Ridge come in there? I mean, do they have a bathroom out there now?
They do not.
And they want a bathroom? Or
sure, permanent restroom. We have a porta-john out. I think we have a porta-potty out there. But yes, they would.
But there is a demand.
Oh yeah, there's a neighborhood utilization out there for sure.
Okay.
Absolutely. And it's a town park.
All right.
So.
I just don't hear anybody jumping up and down and hollering about that one.
Well, they're not jumping up and down and hollering, but we have gotten feedback.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think our goal needs to be every bathroom, just like what you're providing right here, and James A. Campbell being number 1 on the list is James. Better lean forward. I think your plan right here, providing a bathroom at every single park, is exactly what this board requested at the last meeting. I think James A. Campbell being number 1 priority on the list is exactly what this board discussed at the last meeting. The only conversation we've ever had is contractors that have wanted to retire off of the town taxpayers' dollars, which right. Must be nice. I have obviously learned being on town council the money that there is in government contracting, because I can build houses for these prices right here. It's beside the point. I'm in favor of James A. Campbell Park being the number 1 priority right there, and then going through that process of trying to get bathrooms at every single park in town. I don't see how we can justify one over the other, and maybe other than after the 21 plan's done, if you look at utilization on the others. But I think you got a good recommendation right there, and this is exactly what we have talked about.
What I do want to show the town board is let me get back to earlier. I showed you this. This chart here does not. It makes a number of assumptions both on revenue and expenditures, and it does not include any of those restrooms except for in fiscal year 24. It includes a Carol Howard Johnson Environmental Park restroom.
Now, I do think at retreat, though, Adam, is the time that we may want to look at some of these other projects in here. I know another item you have tonight is 5-year plan on Parks and Rec, and look at that stuff since that the board may or may not, but at least thinking direction the board will go tonight is wanting to support putting bathrooms in the mall. May mean some of these other projects have to get
No,
revisited or not necessarily.
they do not.
We got enough money, but it may be
Yeah,
more
but
money than
I
wants to get
think what
spent.
we're talking about is doing the James A. Campbell Park. I don't want to confuse it with
Yeah,
a whole
I just want to show the board,
Okay,
if the question is, can we afford to do the plan?
yeah,
Okay, the bottom number here is $2.3 million after fiscal year 25. Okay, does everybody see the $2.3 million at the bottom
Yes,
in
sir.
blue? If you incorporate this plan, okay, forget fiscal year 27 because our model only goes out to fiscal year 25. But if you include the first 6 restrooms, it would take that number down to $1.3 million. We would still have $1.3 million after all the projects that the town board has previously approved and after putting those 6 restrooms in at prices that I hope are inflated, that I hope we get better bids back on or better conversation with. But if we incorporate those in, we would still have $1.3 million
what is your growth rate on that?
at the end. Well,
A number of houses a year?
I think I have to go back to our 5-year plan, Mayor, but I think we're conservative. I think we're looking at about 500 houses.
Okay,
And this money is designed to be used and spent
And
on
it's
Parks
not
and
just
Rec
houses,
stuff.
Mayor, it's also
Apartments.
multifamily projects as
yeah,
well.
and we've done pretty good.
We have,
on
since the
those.
board has changed the policy on that.
You'll still have 1.3 million left over, and this is what this money is used for. It's restricted funds for Parks and Rec type items anyway. It's not like you can go and build roads with this stuff or anything else. And so this is what this money is designed to be used for. You can't just underwrite operating budgets.
So what I'm saying to you is, unless at retreat in the future, the town board has a reprioritization of the other projects that you have previously approved in a 5-year plan, and I'm asking you to adopt tonight in a facility master plan. Unless you want to change that up in the future, we can afford, based on our conservative assumptions, to move forward with the bathroom implementation plan for the next 5 years, as well as all of our other identified projects. It would reduce our surplus in this fund to 1.3 million versus 2.3 million, but you get the bathroom assets in the parks where they're arguably needed.
And
so-
the need for it in these other locations is the only question I have. In other words, you're saying that the need is there
Yeah, there's a need there.
in these other locations, and if it is, then I think it's okay with me.
And in some of these other locations, the need is more than others,
That's right.
to be honest with you.
Okay.
Now, what I am recommending to you tonight is that we move from this meeting with the objective of implementing this plan, but giving additional time, 60 days perhaps, for us to get 2 things. 1, design on a smaller prototype, and 2, bid numbers from these 4 contractors and maybe more contractors.
That's right, maybe more.
That's right.
I hope this conversation tonight creates more interest.
That's right. The goal is to move forward with a James A. Campbell Park and Alston Ridge Park restroom in fiscal year 21, the current fiscal year that we are in. But I think we need more information to be able to make sure that we're doing it in a fiscally responsible way. And that's my recommendation.
Okay. Commissioner Harris, you have any thoughts or anything?
Oh, yeah, I have a couple of thoughts, it gets back to my original concern about the uniqueness, I think, of the James Campbell Park as it relates to the other parks and it being included in the plan. I appreciate the information and the plan as far as overall to get the park done. I would think that the park would need to fit the neighborhood as opposed to the other parks. It sounds as if you want to do just a prototype for all parks. Is that the idea that you're looking at?
Well, the prototype, I think, gives us an economy of scales, and it's not the same prototype for all parks. It is a prototype for similar parks. The prototype would change depending on park utilization and how we program it. We program parks that have athletic fields much differently than we do a neighborhood park like James A. Campbell Park or Austin Ridge Park.
So how would the design be different for James A. Campbell as opposed to Austin Ridge?
It would not.
If there were a need to.
I would recommend the same design for the two parks. The utilization, the two parks are essentially almost identical. In fact, the only differentiator between the Austin Ridge Park and the James A. Campbell Park is that the Austin Ridge Park has the beginnings of a greenway that the public can access.
Well, you reference utilization, and it sounds as if James A. Campbell Park is being utilized more as it relates to what Ms. Vaughn identified tonight as far as using the park.
Yeah, I think I'm not saying that the parks aren't used, but I think the park, in comparison to other neighborhood parks, is similar. And I think the park, compared to parks where we program, is a very much lower utilization.
That was my concern, the uniqueness, as again, the uniqueness of James Campbell Park and how it's currently being utilized as opposed to Austin Ridge. And you may not have the same kind of utilization. And I'm just wondering, would the design be such that it would address the specific needs of Campbell Park and that the neighborhood? That's my.
I think the design would address the needs of providing a permanent restroom facility for neighborhood parks with low utilization.
So you keep insinuating that Campbell Park has low utilization
compared to parks where we have ball fields and we program youth athletics. It absolutely has.
Well, have you ever considered the fact that because there are no restrooms, people don't go?
Yes, we've considered that, but I don't think that is the overwhelming factor.
Well, how do you measure that as far as impacting utilization? That's, to me, I think that's a concern, because I see the park from the standpoint of utilization as it being utilized pretty well. And I think the design would have some significance as it relates to the current utilization.
I don't want to discredit that the park is not being utilized. It is being utilized, but it is a small neighborhood park with limited amenities compared to other parks that we have in our system.
Understand.
The utilization is just not it's not the same. It's just lower utilization. And yes, there are some feeding programs that do utilize the park, and that's good. And I think that does add to the utilization, but the numbers are still pretty low in volume. 30 people here, 45, 50 people here, in certain time frames and certain times of the week. It's not like that is the utilization constantly Monday through Sunday, 8 to 5. And more often than not, that park is not very busy in comparison to when they have a feeding program or something like that that's utilized.
Adam, you might want to talk a little bit about, you've got the neighborhood park. Mm-hmm. Then we have a community park.
Correct.
Don't we? And then we have how many different parks do we have?
Well, we have a neighborhood park, we have a community park, and then we get into regional parks.
Regional park.
That's right.
Okay, so we have 3 different parks out there, and they all get confused in the shuffle. But typically, the neighborhood park is the one that is underutilized.
Less utilized.
Less utilized, and if they don't have a bathroom, then I would say, a little bit like Commissioner Harris is saying, underutilized.
Yeah, I think that the bathroom will make, any permanent restroom will make any park more attractive.
Yes.
I think that's just
that's what we're trying to do.
That's just I think that's a given, and I think that will it attract tenfold more people? I don't think so, but I do think it'll make it more attractive for any neighborhood park, any community park, any regional park to have permanent restrooms.
That's right. What do you need from us? Just a signal on approving this?
Well, I think I just need a consensus from the board. I don't know that I need any formal action tonight. I just need consensus from the board that you are in agreement with the plan that I put forward, and that you are agreeable to giving this thing another 60 days to let us get more information so that we can attempt to build these restrooms at a reasonable price.
You got 60 days, try to do it in 30, and let's be in the bathroom
Well, I
before
can't get the small,
before the end of the year.
I can't get the small design back before 60 days. That's what the contractor is guaranteeing.
Well, I understand, you just do your best, but we want to move this forward as quick as we can.
I do too.
Okay. Any other comments from anybody else?
Well, I just like the idea of looking toward restroom facilities pretty much across the park program, because I think that's something we ought to provide.
Mm-hmm.
If we're, if they're going to be of service to our neighborhoods or to our recreation programs, whatever, I feel like that's a minimum amenity that we need to provide.
I think you're right.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a comment. I like the idea also that the town manager threw out of the possibility to be able to negotiate with contractors and see if we can even negotiate down a better price. I think that's a good way to try to go if you can legally to do that.
We can because of the
Size of it.
the size of the contract.
I think it's a good idea. Personally, I think it's a good idea.
Mr. Manager, I'd make a comment. With Mayor Pro Tem and Commissioner Harris have been in the last 7, retreats, and I've heard Commissioner Harris ask, for this particular bathroom. I've joined him. Was astounded when I saw the price that was presented twice. What I love about what you're saying tonight is that this will get the job done, and it will get it done in 21.
Yeah.
And it will give an opportunity to not, I hate to use the word, but fall victim to having to pay an enormous, outrageous price to put something that really needs to be there and should be there now, definitely. So I like the opportunity, if we're only talking 60 days, then to be able to save a substantial amount of money. With all that said, I really appreciate what you've laid out. I think that this accomplishes what we need, and what I wanted to hear said tonight was that this bathroom got built in this fiscal year, and I think that I think it's the best of all worlds. So.
And just so, thank you, Commissioner, and just so we're setting expectations clearly here, we expect to get the smaller neighborhood park prototype back in 60 days. We will then have to turn that design over to various contractors.
Right. Bid on it.
They'll have to sharpen their pencil. That could take another couple of weeks for them to give us prices back. And then I can bring a recommendation to the town board to say, this is what I'm recommending. We build prototype A, B, C, or D.
If you get it back in a couple of weeks, I'll be tickling.
Yeah, for this price. Well, that's what we're going to gun for and shoot for anyway. But I don't want you to hold me to 60 days to today, because I think that's going to be a little challenging. We'll have our design back at that point, but then we still got to negotiate.
Push on, do your
have
best.
Contractors.
We'll
do it.
Man.
I wanted to say, I also like the idea of having handicapped accessibility and baby changing tables in every one of them.
Yes, ma'am.
Well,
Thank you.
I think we got to do that. I think
That's a new standard for sure.
New standard.
New standard.
Okay. Anybody else? Thank you, everybody, for their participation in this and help. With this project. And I didn't realize the size of the Campbell Park is, we said 5 acres, over 5 acres?
It is. It's a little over 5.7 acres, but a lot of the property is wooded and some of it's wet.
Well, what I would say is maybe there's a way to utilize a little more of it.
Yeah.
It could be different. 5 acres. Maybe it's, I hate to use the word, different equipment, out there, children's equipment or other things.
And we've begun to have those conversations internally as well as, are there things that in the future, of course, not in any plan that we have right now, but in the future, are there ways to further enhance the James A. Campbell Park? And Jonathan and myself and Mark have begun having those internal conversations.
Yeah, and we've had some discussion over there about people wanting to buy some of it.
That's true, too.
But, it's a park that I don't think that that you want to get rid of anything you need about what you got there.
And one thing I sort of needed...
is it a way for it to connect to the Greenway? well, eventually it'll go through that bottom, won't it?
Yeah, it would require bridges, some pedestrian bridges to be built, which, you know, are not inexpensive. But there is a way to connect to the existing sidewalk network.
Out on Academy Street,
On Academy Street.
42.
42.
Now, see, that would be a real asset for that area over there, would be able to have that connectivity with the Greenway to that sidewalk, I think.
Potentially so. So we'll have to further look and explore that for
Okay.
certain. So that concludes my presentation on restrooms for
All
tonight.
right, I think you did a good job. We appreciate it very
Yeah,
much.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Adam.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam.
Yes. Okay, we move on to 10, y'all help me now.
C.
I'm jumping around. 10C,
Yes, sir.
5-year comprehensive system-wide master plan, parks, recreation, and cultural resources. More information about this agenda item will be presented by Adam Mitchell.
And so, to some degree, I sort of went over, do have a slide deck, but to some degree, I went over this already with the town board in the previous presentation, the projects that were programmed in. I'm going to, unless the board just has a strong appetite for me to do this, I'm going to sort of move past the abstract review with the board to just say that what I'm recommending here is by motion that the town board approve the 2025-year comprehensive system-wide parks, recreation, and cultural resources master plan as presented and recommended. And this plan is consistent with the 5-year plan that the town's annual 5-year plan that you had previously adopted. This is consistent with the priorities that the town board discussed at the town board retreat back in January, as well as numerous conversations during our budget workshops. And so again, fiscal year 21 projects, these are included. Now we would come back later and amend this plan to include restrooms that we discussed at a future meeting. What I'm recommending tonight that the town board do is just adopt it in its current state, which is consistent with the 5-year plan. And then once we have more information, 60 or so days from now, about restrooms and designs, we'd come back and amend this to include fiscal year 21 restrooms, fiscal year 23 restrooms, and fiscal year 25 restrooms. This does not go out to fiscal year 27 like the restroom plan that I just presented to you does. Again, these are the projects in fiscal year 21, identical to our 5-year plan that you previously adopted. 22 projects, 23 projects, includes the $6.5 million for the Community Center North and Senior Center.
I'd get a new picture up there. I think we've gotten I hope we've gotten some of these bushes trimmed back up there. The bushes look bigger than the building almost, but I believe all of that's trimmed back now. You can get a better picture.
We can look at updating the photo. I'm not sure which photo you're referring to, Mayor, but
The one right here that I'm looking at
I'm just not looking at it on my screen.
in your book.
Yeah, with the hilltop, yeah, we can update that. We've done a lot of actually landscaping improvements since then.
Yeah.
And then fiscal year 25 additional investment in the Hilltop Needmore Town Park and Preserve. Again, I just spent a lot of time going over this in a previous presentation.
Yeah.
In summary, the total investment in 4 years, not including the restrooms that we just talked about, is $9.6 million, and then there's an undetermined amount in fiscal year 25 that presumably, if we have surplus in our rec unit fees and potentially other partnerships that we might look at, we would program in some dollar amount in fiscal year 25 for the Hilltop Needmore Town Park and Preserve improvements. The proposed cost per park, again, this does not include restrooms. This is just based off the plan that has been previously reviewed by the board and approved in our 5-year plan. Action Park, $250,000. Austin Ridge and Hidden Valley Greenways, $333,000. Those are just design. Ballantyne School Park, $295,000. Carol Howard Johnson, $410,000. Hilltop Needmore Town Park and Preserve, $841,000, and that does not include improvements in fiscal year 25. Falcon Park, $65,000. Fuquay-Varina Dog Park for the shade structure, $12,000. Honeycutt Road Park, $159,000. South Park in the community center improvements, $117,000. And then, of course, the new senior center and community center north, $7.1 million.
Do we need to adopt this?
This is what my recommendation is. By motion, approve the 2020 5-year comprehensive system-wide Parks and Recreation and Cultural Resources Master Plan as presented and recommended.
I would like in the motion for us to include the people that have served on the advisory board, and Brian Haynes and his group, certainly, I mean, and staff, but they've spent an awful lot of time, Jonathan has, bringing this all together.
Yes,
I mean,
sir.
This has been worked on for, 18 months or something, or that?
A little bit longer than that.
Longer than
actually.
that?
About, yeah, close
Okay.
to about 2 years. And so if you wanted to include it in the motion, perhaps the motion would be approve the 2020 5-year comprehensive system-wide Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Master Plan, Resources Master Plan, as presented and recommended by the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board and town staff.
Okay. I would entertain that motion.
Well, I just got one question.
Okay.
So, with the, I gotta get my thoughts together. That the building that used to be the old library
Mm-hmm.
and Library Park, do we know anything that's going to be happening with that building yet?
Well, COVID-19 has certainly pumped the brakes on that, so I cannot provide a definitive yet, but we are continuing our dialogue and conversations with DMV and how we might best be able to utilize that. But no firm information to provide to you this evening, other than we have made, as a town, some recent investments to put a new roof on the building and HVAC units to stabilize the property until its final reconfiguration can be completed.
Well, I just know that neither one of those parks are anywhere in this, and there's going to be something going on there probably in this next 5 years or whatever.
Again, yeah, so in 2020, we've made a good investment in stabilizing that building, and of course, the town, through improvements to facilitate the moving forward of the train depot that we're not financially paying for, but we did make changes to our policy so that project could move forward. And we'll continue to evaluate how we might best be able to invest in those parks in the future, whether it's restrooms or other amenities.
I'd like to see utilizing the restrooms that we already got over there. We got restrooms in that building.
In the building when the hours are open.
That means we got to keep the building, we got to get the building open.
More hours, that's right.
That's my thought about that, as against building something else that's, that's on the outside. We can do that now, basically. But we got to work with the group there to accomplish that. But and we have had a lot of dialogue with the driver's license people, and we hopefully we're in good stead with them. But they have closed places, and this one was closed and opens now by appointment, and I think they've started to open back up, Maryland, a little more regularly now, but there was a while they were just going by appointment only.
I know the world's turned upside down since we
It is, we're trying.
last talked about some of these things.
Yeah, we're trying. But I would entertain that motion, but I want to make sure that we thank our advisory board here for that, and staff too, for this report.
Mayor Byrne, I make a motion that we approve the 2025-year Comprehensive System-Wide Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Master Plan as presented and recommended.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Adam. And I appreciate the way you kind of led us into that. it was a good presentation that got us to that point. Okay, delegating town-owned road closure authority, temporary street closures, both with Depot and Stewart Street. More information about this agenda item will be presented by Town Manager Mitchell.
Thank you, Mayor. So the purpose of this agenda item is to consider delegating authority to me as town manager to, when necessary, temporarily close down Depot and Stewart Streets when applicable to provide the mill and Aviator Smokehouse additional capacity to temporarily extend operational premises during the North Carolina COVID-19 easing of restrictions reopening phasing plan. So downtown businesses, the Mill at 146 South Main Street and Aviator Smokehouse at 525 East Broad Street are requesting that the following streets be closed to vehicular traffic from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. on Friday and Saturday for the duration of the North Carolina's extension of Phase 2 reopening plan, and it could be even in Phase 3, the COVID-19 public health emergency. Depot Street, South Main Street, and not entirely to Spring Avenue. We actually have a map here on your screen. It would be basically from South Main Street to just the alleyway behind the buildings, and the same thing on Stewart Street. It would actually be from Broad Street to sort of the back corners of the buildings there where the smokehouse is. The purpose of this street closure request is to allow additional outdoor seating for these businesses following Governor Cooper's COVID-19 easing of restrictions phasing plan. The governor's modified Phase 2 reopening plan permits restaurants to open with restricted regulations for occupancy capacity limitations. The governor's easing of restrictions regulations currently in effect through July 17th limits restaurants to 50% of stated fire capacity or 12 people per 1,000 square feet, with the most restrictive number being used. Restaurants are also required to practice social distancing for both indoor and outdoor dining. All Fuquay-Varina restaurants and businesses have been negatively affected by COVID-19, while many restaurants outside of downtown districts in the DC1 and DC2 have dedicated surface parking lot spaces that can be transformed and used for expanded outdoor seating during Phase 2. The Mill has no dedicated private parking spaces, and the Aviator Smokehouse has a dedicated private parking lot behind its building. However, a portion of these spaces are utilized by Aviator employees during business hours. In the absence of adequate dedicated private parking for the Mill and Aviator Smokehouse, these businesses are challenged. Temporarily closing the proposed streets during evening hours on Friday and Saturday evenings during the limited Phase 2 would allow the Mill and the Aviator Smokehouse to safely serve more customers while working through a plan to modify their business operations that includes the rehiring of employees lost as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic state of emergency. As it relates to serving alcohol within the proposed road closures, the ABC Commission has temporarily allowed on-premise ABC permit holders to include additional outdoor seating as a part of their licensed premises, if the appropriate local government entity approves the space. The temporary change is allowed to maximize social distancing. The following regulations apply to the ABC's temporary extension of premises guidelines for Phase 2. If extending into public property, such as a sidewalk or street closures, it is recommended that the local governing authority issue written guidelines either by resolution or from appropriate government division. Consumers will not be allowed to take open containers of alcoholic beverages out of the temporary extension of the premises area. Kind of think of it like beer gardens for public events. Same principle applies here. Once that area is defined and identified, they can't leave that premise with the open container. Consumers will not be allowed to take open containers of alcoholic beverages out of the temporary extension premise area. The extension of premises must be adjacent to, abutting, and connected to the primary licensed premises. That means that another business that is not abutting or adjacent to Depot Street would not be able to use that area, or Stewart Street for that matter, as their extended premises. You have to be adjacent to, abutting, and connected to the primary licensed premise. One of the exterior walls of the licensed premise must be a part of the extended area. An application for a temporary extension will not need to be submitted to the ABC Commission. In addition to receiving approval from the appropriate local government entity, the permittee must notify their ALE agent, the district ALE office, or local law enforcement of the temporary extension of premise prior to use of the extended area. A diagram of the temporary extension must be maintained on the permitted premises, indicating the size and location of the temporary extension, the types of barriers to be used, and how many tables and chairs will be placed in the temporary area. The temporary extension does not increase an establishment's maximum occupancy as previously established by fire code. So if your occupancy is 200, just because you have additional space outside in a public area doesn't mean you can go to 400. Okay, 200 is still your
Well, are they saying 50% or?
and it's 50%. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So you can't up the number to get around the rule. Any temporary extension.
And that's part of the issue, really, I think, is you've taken away from businesses that were able to do a certain capacity, say 100 people, and now they can't do but 50 people.
That's right.
And so the outside dining is allowing them maybe to get back more toward their normal.
Correct.
But they're doing it in an outside space versus trying to get everybody inside.
Mm-hmm. Temporary area must be visibly and vertically marked off, crowd control, stands, bike racks, planters, etc., whatever the application is that you use, so that the average citizen can distinguish between the extended licensed premises and the public walkway. So, as it relates to the mill, currently the mill is classified as a private bar, and they're not permitted to serve alcohol by the glass to the public at this time under Governor Cooper's recent executive orders. At this time, the mill is only permitted to sell packaged beer as retail goods, with the only goods allowed to be served and consumed on site being coffee and packaged baked goods. Aviator Smokehouse is classified as a restaurant, and it's allowed to operate during Phase 2. The closure of these two town-owned streets is in response to the business's needs to secure additional space to conduct business sales and operations. The mill and the Aviator situation is unique in that these businesses do not have, again, dedicated private parking areas that would allow for an extension of temporary premise to conduct the business. For instance, the Mason Jar, as a comparison, the restaurant has a dedicated privately owned parking lot with nearby on-street and surface lot parking that would allow for them to extend their outdoor seating area into their privately owned parking lot and still have ample parking for patrons in the proximity of their business. As outlined in the on-premise ABC's temporary extension, the extension of premises must be adjacent to, abutting, and connected to the primary existing licensed premise. One of the exterior walls of the licensed premise must be a part of the extended area, and the mill and the Aviator Smokehouse both satisfy this criteria. If the town board approves this request, town management would have the administrative authority to temporarily close Depot Street subject to the mill's ability to reopen following an updated executive order issued by Governor Cooper, authorizing bars to reopen under new guidelines. In respect to the Aviator Smokehouse, if approved, town manager would work with the business to begin facilitating the appropriate paperwork to extend the temporary premise on Stewart Street. My point here is that Stewart Street
There's two different things.
Yeah, Stewart Street, based on the Aviator's classification, could begin temporary closure immediately. The mill is not as necessary pressing because they're not allowed to be selling alcohol right now because they're classified as a bar.
The thing I would say to you is make sure that your customers, our citizens, will be real aware that those streets are closed.
Oh,
I mean, this is a Friday night, this is a Saturday night.
That's right. We would make it.
You know, I mean,
evident.
it's going to have to be something that, you know, people recognize driving a vehicle that it's closed because it's something different.
So what does this do to help the mill then? I mean, they need.
It does nothing until they're allowed to open as a bar.
Well, the governor doesn't have any end in sight on allowing something like that.
He may not.
They sell food there. Why can't we as planning reclassify them as some type of restaurant or something to help them out?
We can do
They don't
that.
sell
They've
enough
got
food
a AOE permit. They've got they're licensed and classified by the state as a bar.
Well, the state's wrong. They're a restaurant. They sell food.
And they've made their appeal to the state, and the state has turned them down.
There's
They
everybody.
don't
Tell the state-
sell enough
we tell the
food,
state that
Blake.
we disagree with them, that they're a
Yeah,
restaurant in our town.
We
everybody.
can tell them all day long, but the state has made their determination, and they do not plan
What
to
if they have a
change that.
food truck outside on the street closure?
Doesn't matter. That doesn't change their classification.
What if the food truck's named the Mill Food Truck?
Doesn't change their classification as a business. They've made that appeal.
That's silly. I mean,
I don't disagree
Well,
with you.
we don't disagree with that, but that's not in our realm of.
what else can we do in our realm, anything at all to help them operate? I mean, it can be, or it can have a private function, or not private, a street festival.
Not
like-
sell alcohol, they can't.
What we,
If people
what-
buy
the-
alcohol to go and then sell outside on their own, on the street on the street that's closed on Depot Street.
No, because they would be an open container on a public street.
Not if the street's closed, like we're talking about.
Yeah, it would be. It wouldn't, legally, it wouldn't pass.
w- we,
So what you're telling me is closing the street will help them in the future, and that's good, but there's absolutely nothing we can do tonight to help them out on that.
No, sir.
well, the closure of the
Are they
street
getting-
allows them to plan.
It does.
And it allows them to know that it's a backup plan for them when the order is lifted.
As high as the numbers are, I don't foresee this order getting lifted anytime soon.
Well, I don't disagree with you about that.
And they're struggling and need help.
You
I
know,
mean,
and
how hard did it get reclassified as a restaurant?
you have to ask them about
Yeah,
it.
they
but
would have to go through that.
Manager can answer a couple of these simple questions, Mayor. These are not hard things. He's
They would need to
answered
go-
them for me.
We've talked about them.
They would need to go back through an application process with the ABC Commission.
They
Could they
would
partner
probably
with
have
Anna's
to put
Pizza,
in a
for instance,
kitchen
and
too,
have-
Blake.
Be a restaurant type deal.
They can make that appeal or that petition to the ABC Commission and see if that would pass a smell test. That's not something we can do for them. They can make
I understand,
that.
but things that we could help suggest to them about.
Yeah, they could.
Well,
They could.
they've got to cook food in there. They've got to they made a decision.
Yeah,
early.
they don't have a kitchen.
Weren't
I
gonna do a-
understand what y'all two are telling me. There's nothing wrong with me asking the manager these questions. Y'all ask manager all kinds of questions, and I don't interrupt y'all. So let me ask my question.
No, we're not trying to interrupt you at all. We're not. I'm sorry.
Okay, manager, you have helped me.
So
on
that's one thing they could potentially do is go back to the ABC Commission and make the argument that they've got some sort of partnership with a food establishment and therefore they should be classified as a restaurant. And if that passes the smell test, then yeah, they could begin to sell alcohol and we could, then the street closure becomes more pertinent to them.
So for the mill, for instance, and any of our other downtown businesses have been hit hard, and Aviator too that we're talking about tonight, this is all that we have in our power at this time to be able to do to help them.
Unfortunately.
Okay, so that's what I was grasping for, trying to figure out, is there anything else that could be added to that? Okay.
And the aviators, they're in obviously a much better position because they have kitchens and restaurants and they're just
Understand.
classified differently. But yes, that's all the tools we have in the toolbox right now.
Thank you very much. Make a motion to approve.
Let me ask this question. Does anybody else have any other comments?
No.
No.
Okay.
So I did pass out to you
This sheet, right.
each of you a different motion that was included in your agenda. What was included in the agenda did not contemplate addressing the fact that these are both one-way streets, and once you close a portion of it. And so what this motion says is authorize the town manager the authority to temporarily close Depot and Stewart Streets when applicable during COVID-19 emergency as recommended by town management. That's consistent with what was in your agenda packet. And then it further goes to say, furthermore, the town board authorizes local traffic only vehicles access for those with a place of business on Depot Street during those hours the temporary extension of premises is in effect. During the temporary closure, authorized vehicles shall be permitted to access the unencumbered portion of Depot Street to travel in the direction opposite of the one-way direction indicated in the town's traffic ordinance to access their property. This is not an issue on Stewart Street because the Aviator is on both sides of Stewart Street and they can access the other portion of Stewart Street through circulation of their parking lot.
Okay.
I still motion to approve stands for substitute motion also.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And I think it's a good thing, and I hope that it'll allow the mill to do some planning, which I think is essential, because it gives them the base of knowing that they can do this when it is lifted. Okay, we move on to item 11, Manager's Report.
Okay, just a few items to mention to the town board this evening outside of what has already been presented on the agenda. So our downtown development efforts have been fruitful once again for another year. The town's Main Street program has again received its annual Main Street America accreditation from the National Main Street Center. This marks 7 times the program has received this designation, and it's a good landmark designation for the town and its downtown district. So very proud of the work that our downtown manager, Dawn Russell, is doing. Very proud of the work that the Fuquay-Varina Downtown Revitalization Association and their army of volunteers are doing to keep this accreditation and designation for our Main Street program going. So,
And your assistant town manager, Jim Seymour, has been active in
and he has been as well. Yeah. Good point. As it relates to economic development, we do plan to conclude interviews this week for the vacant economic development director position. I hope to be making an announcement in the not so distant future about the filling of that position. As it relates to the engineering department, our engineering staff is working presently with the NCDOT and our contractor to coordinate the Wilburn Road closure beginning July 27th as a part of the Northwest Judd Parkway construction project. And so what this means is, beginning July 27th, the section of Wilburn Road between North Broad Street and Coley Farm Road will be closed to through traffic for approximately 30 days while construction continues on the Northwest Judd Parkway project. NCDOT will be approving a detour route that will be in effect during that time period, and as soon as we know what that is, we'll be blasting that out on social media and on our town website so that the public is aware. This is to support the widening to the full section, cross-section of the Northwest Judd Parkway, and to construct the realignments of Wilburn Road and Bridge Street. And so signage and message boards will be placed to provide instructions to local drivers and non-local drivers as well during that period of time.
What period of time? How long?
30 days is what they're
Just
expecting.
30 days?
Now, 30 days, but
Yeah, could be longer.
could be longer if weather doesn't
But
cooperate.
I like it kept in short.
That's right.
Okay.
As it relates to inspections, just as a little bit of a benchmark continuation, in June, we saw 65 single-family home permits that were issued that month, and so far through July 13th, we've had 32 single-family permits. So starting the fiscal year off strong thus far, and I will be reporting some record-setting numbers at our next board meeting for the fiscal year 20 total single-family home permits issued at our next meeting. As it relates to public utilities, I did hire a new employee in the town's water department today. Kyle Strasser will be our new utility maintenance mechanic starting in early August. So we're glad to have Kyle come on board and join our team. He's been working for the last 17 years as a diesel mechanic, and so he knows his way around engines and parts that he may very well come into contact with our water resources department, especially pumps. So we're glad to have his level of experience.
Are most of those diesel pumps?
A lot of them are, not all, but a lot of them are. The planning department submitted the bicycle and pedestrian master planning grant application to the North Carolina Department of Transportation and will be notified in October or November if they're awarded. And the department continues to review a steady intake of subdivision and site plan submittals. Our art center is continuing to build on the Tiger Cub program, and additionally they're building virtual content for streaming and also planning virtual and outdoor classes. Parks and Recreation, Cultural Resources Department, the Fuquay Mineral Spring Park Bridge replacement project is finished and the bridge is now back open to the public. There are some...
I don't think it's finished yet.
It's finished.
Well, they don't have the brick.
And so the next part I was going to say is that there are some aesthetic columns that are remain to be put up, and we're scheduling the contractor right now for that. But the bridge is open for pedestrian passage.
It is. But when you said finished, it kind of caught me.
The work continues on the splash pad water recirculation system project. The two biggest areas of focus right now for our Parks and Recreation Department are evaluating if we are going to do fall youth sports and event options for the fall. And that specifically revolves around our fall concert series and Celebrate Fuquay-Varina. And you might have seen last week where the city of Raleigh made the decision that they are canceling all festivals and events of 25 people or more through October 31st. I think you're going to see other communities follow suit here in the near future. And certainly what we hear from the governor and state officials in the coming days and weeks is probably going to impact that decision making. We have set an internal deadline of August 1st to make these decisions. If we don't go ahead and pull the trigger on signing contracts with bands and talent and vendors and things of that nature, we're not going to be positioned to be able to put those events on. And frankly, at the end of the day, the question comes down to, is it safe. And reasonable to have large events with large gatherings of people while things are still not moving in the right direction. And so I'm not saying tonight that I'm recommending that we cancel these events today or cancel fall youth sports today, but when you see the Wake County Public School System come out and say that they are canceling all high school athletics indefinitely until further notice,
you know what's coming.
That's a signal right there that youth sports is not looking very positive at the moment. Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources is also involved in the Community Center, Senior Center, Hilltop Needmore Road Elementary School master planning process with the Wake County Public School System. There is some surveying going on right now out at that park, and we'll be continuing out there for several more weeks as they are getting their points of boundaries together for the area that the master planning will include. Our IT department is continuing to support our police department move and installing cameras and Wi-Fi in Action Park and Fleming Loop Park, and we're working on IT security initiatives and planning for implementing fiscal year 21 projects. Our Public Works Department is working to fill the street maintenance superintendent position, completing mowing and seasonal maintenance activities and sanitation and yard debris collections. And our Finance Department is establishing a fiscal year 21 purchase orders and prepping for our fiscal year 20 audit, which is going to be here before we know it. Just some additional items to bring to your attention. There is a project status report included in your agenda materials with the lengthy list of active projects that we've got going on. If you've had an opportunity to review that, or in the upcoming days when you have an opportunity to review it, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me and we'll talk through those. I just want to do a reminder. I'm going to come back to a quick report on the Lincoln Heights Neighborhood Area Property Improvement Report. But before I do that, I do want to remind the board that there is only one meeting in the month of July, and that's tonight. There is no meeting on July 21st. We unfortunately did cancel the ice cream social that was previously scheduled for Sunday, July 19th. We will look forward to hopefully coming back next year in 21 and having a bigger, better ice cream social. That's always a fun event and always great to have people in the community get together at the Fuquay Mineral Spring Park. But COVID-19 is just not going to permit it this year. And I am going to report to you that we are going to reschedule the National Night Out Against Crime at the Fuquay-Varina Police Department at our open house. We're going to temporarily reschedule that for October 6th, and again, that will also be dependent on COVID. Didn't make much sense to have an open house at a police department that is full of crates and boxes ready for a move, and August 5th is, not to mention COVID-19, August 5th is probably going to be a little too early to have an open house at our new police station, so we're temporarily rescheduling that to October 6th, potentially later than that, depending on COVID-19. And you do have 3 first readings in your agenda materials. A zoning map amendment from the Spalding Group for 917 Southeast Judd Parkway and 0 Award Street. A zoning map amendment submitted by the Timmons Group at 10,212 and 10,204 Fayetteville Road, and 3916, 3918, 0 and 0 Hilltop Needmore Road, and then a zoning map amendment submitted by Bass Nixon Kennedy at 805 Coley Farm Road, all of those being first readings for your consideration. And so finally, before I conclude my manager's report, it was asked of me at our last board meeting to just bring back a quick update on where we are with code compliance as it relates to property improvements in the Lincoln Heights neighborhood area. So there should be a presentation on the screen now. And I just want to quickly run through this slide deck. We good? Okay. All right. And so this is a report from management staff regarding code compliance efforts seeking to improve various properties in the Lincoln Heights neighborhood and surrounding vicinity. And so just as a quick reminder to the town board about code compliance violations, the violation process includes a warning letter, which involves a 10-day notice. So this is for a first-time violation. The notice of violation comes after a warning letter, and this is a 10 to 15-day notice that has to be given to abate the violation. It explains the violation, and you have to give 10 to 15 days to abate the violation. And then a 72-hour notice. This is after the notice of violation, 72-hour notice to give warning that if it's not abated, that there will be a $100 per day fine, and the town can abate it and bill the owner for the services. Of course, then we got to go chase down our money through typically foreclosure. And then all letters are given a 3-day grace period for transit time. So you can see here that from the time we identify a violation, it could be upwards to a month before anything actually gets done. And then even then it might require that the town have to go out and abate the issue.
Well, one of the other things that happens in there that the town doesn't get credit for is typically the town has been out 4 or 5 times or had dialogue.
That's true.
With the people early on, and nothing has transpired. So you have to really err more on the side of the town than you think you do, because town staff and town management could have been out trying to encourage folks to move through these violations.
That's right. And so there's a violation process, and then there's a compliance process, and that typically either involves the abatement of the violation or non-compliance, and a 72-hour notice process must be given. These are standards in our town ordinances, and they also mirror and blend with the North Carolina general statutes. So since we began identifying violations in this area, we had identified 9 lots that were tall grass violations that fit into the standard of a tall grass violation pursuant to our code. 6 of those were abated, and again, recently abated. The lawns were mowed, the debris and the brush was removed as a result of our efforts. One of those is in the process of an abatement plan. To the mayor's point, we're working with that property owner to kind of nudge them along and get it abated under a plan. One of those we've had to issue the 72-hour notice to, and that means that we would likely have to go out there and do it ourselves. Once it gets to that point, it's not very likely that the property owner is going to do it themselves for whatever various reason. And then we've got one where we did go out and abate it ourselves, and we've billed that person, and we likely will receive our money back through a foreclosure process that Wake County would be implementing. There were also 3 lots that we identified excessive trash. 2 of those were abated, and 1 of them is under an abatement plan. And so just to give you some idea, here you've got a lot on the left that the weeds were, in some cases, 4 feet high, 4 feet, 4.5 feet high. We issued the warning letter, and it was abated. It has since grown back, and we've had to nudge the property owner again to get out there and re-abate. And then we've got some that still have outstanding violations, overgrown noxious weeds, or just general trash on their lot that need to be abated. And we are working through that process as prescribed by our code. So just some forward-moving code compliance action items. I'm just going back to the slides that I mentioned. I would say of the properties that we abated, probably 75% of them were abated by the property owner, and about 25% of them we've had to continue either working the process, or the town has got to go out there and take care of it ourselves. But as we move forward with our code compliance action items, we will continue to be attentive to addressing overgrowth. Now, this is not just in the Lincoln Heights neighborhood area, although
it's all around.
This is all around town. That's exactly right. And this includes overgrowth on at the street right-of-way, structures, utility lines, even things that aren't sidewalks, even things that aren't a property owner's responsibility. If we see that we could go out there and make an improvement in the public right-of-way, we're going to do that too, to try to do our part. Addressing trash and overgrowth routinely, identifying right-of-way, again, public trash and overgrowth, removal of old appliances from view of the right-of-way, abating vehicle parking on lawns. We do a lot of this. Our code compliance office stays mighty busy with abandoned or inoperable vehicles that are unlicensed that we have to get with the property owners.
What is the rule on that? If you've got an unlicensed vehicle that is just sitting on somebody's property, is there a length of time they can leave it there, or?
Well, it has to be covered, number one, if it's not covered, and if it doesn't fall within the certain criteria of the statute, they have to remove it under that same notice prescription of days and things of that nature.
But if they have it covered, then that's okay.
If they have it covered, depending on the vehicle, if they have it covered, it could comply.
Okay.
How have your utility companies been in responding to cutting back some overgrowth over power lines?
It's not a priority for them. I mean, if it's an imminent danger to their line, it is, but if it's an aesthetic thing, it's not a priority for the utility.
Well, I think any growth on a power line's got to be, I hope that we're calling them, telling them what we think it's.
Oh, we're definitely notifying them and bringing it to their attention, and they come out and evaluate it as their schedule permits, and sometimes they agree that it's an imminent danger to their line, and sometimes they say this is more of an aesthetic thing and it's not a danger. A vine on a line is not like a limb that's hanging over a line.
Do you feel like Duke is being fair and responsible for what they're doing? They're not ignoring portions of our town or anything like that?
I think sometimes we have to give them a little bit stronger push in some situations and some circumstances, but in many cases they are agreeable to try to address the situation.
What I've noticed about them is
they are much more responsive than the telecom companies. I'll tell you that.
That's right. That's about what I expected at a Time Warner Cable and the phone company. When we first started inquiring about this was due to residents that lived in the community that were complaining, and rightfully complaining, about people that had huge amount of overgrowth and things that were not taking care of the yards and trash and abandoned cars and those types of things. So it sounds like this is well on the way. I know I've gotten positive comments in regards to it and wanting things to be taken care of. How about on any activity that's in the streets or hanging or around abandoned houses? That's where some complaints came from originally. Also, have you seen the not necessarily landlords, the property owners of any of these abandoned houses willing to address these items to what you can for minimum housing?
Yeah, we've had some that obviously have had broken windows, and we've sent them letters about either replacing the windows or boarding the properties up, and we've had some compliance come from those communications as well.
Good. Yep. Don't let it go. Just stay
One of the things that we want to do, obviously, we have code compliance officers that their job is to drive around the community, identify these issues, and address them. But we also are asked the public to help us as well.
Absolutely.
And we want the public to notify us if they've got a concern, and so we are working to create an online notification page that can be done anonymously, so that people can alert us to a concern about a overgrown lot or a trash lot or something like that to even help us be more effective in our code compliance efforts.
Especially public safety.
That's right. And so that's something we're working on as well, that we've learned in our efforts recently that some other communities are doing. And then working with our communications department to create a code enforcement strategy and information guide. We have found that education is still something we need to work on, and educating the public about what their responsibility is. And so we're going to try to pump information out to the community to help people get more informed about it. And so these are the efforts that we're going to be taking moving forward. But we have seen some good progress in the last several months, and I think it's going to be one of those things that we're going to constantly just have to continue to stay focused on.
What I've noticed about Duke Energy is they're not as attentive as the old, and I hate to use the word CP&L, that dates my age a little bit, but as the old Carolina Progress Energy was. They will come out and cut a vine and let the vine die. Mm-hmm. And then maybe they'll come back and pull it down, but maybe they won't. I don't know, but they do a better job with the limbs, like Adam is saying. I've noticed several times they have cut down.
Yeah,
you're right.
They seem to do limbs in seasons that it makes the most sense for them. So before the winter season, when you might have ice storms, they get out there a little bit more aggressively and get those limbs off the trees that are hanging over lines. But
you're right. CP&L and Progress Energy days, though, now Duke bought them out. About sorriest company out there to deal with, and I'll say that right now. We know that from first experience here in this room with things that go on with them. So you're right, it's just not the same thing.
It's who we got.
It's who we're stuck with. You want to have power, you deal with Duke.
That's right.
I will say this, that since we've reorganized the development services division of our town, our assistant manager Jim Seymour, our planning director Pam Davison, they meet monthly with our code compliance, police department, inspections department. We've kind of got a team of individuals in-house now that are working on a strategy for code compliance in our community, and they will be coordinating efforts across departments to create a plan and to continue implementing our strategy for addressing code issues that includes both education to the public and the community throughout.
You know, the one area that I really want us to, and we don't talk about this too much because it doesn't come up, but it's an important area, and you and I have talked about it, is the gas. I think we need to have gas representatives, natural gas representatives, because we've had gas lines busted in neighborhoods and in large intersections, and it shuts the whole thing down for about a day. And if those folks that are the representatives could meet with the code compliance and really keep in the loop of all of what we're having to do, that's the real danger one right there.
Yeah, disagree.
Okay.
All right, so that concludes an update report on code compliance.
Okay.
That's all I have under manager's report, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to answer any questions that you or other board members might have.
Okay. I think we're okay. Why don't we go ahead on around the room, and I'll start with our Mayor Pro Tem Massengale.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank staff for the amount of time it went through putting together these park and rec programs, starting with bathrooms and following the 5-year plan and what's going on for the future. I mean, that's a large sum of money that we have that goes directly back into our community. And as we discussed earlier, how important the bathrooms have been and at bathroom sites, and finding, we're not there yet, but it looks like we're, hopefully I see light from the standpoint of we're finding a way to get bathrooms in parks, and especially going ahead and getting it at James A. Campbell Park as discussed earlier. So I know that took a lot of time for staff to turn around in this 2-week time period with the 4th of July holiday right there. So thank you for getting that, allowing us to be able to make that decision tonight and get that going in a positive direction. No further comments, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Commissioner Smith.
I have no comments tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Harris.
No comment, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Wunsch.
I was just going to thank manager and staff for presenting that report on how we can accomplish bathrooms in the parks. I know that's something we laid out in 2014, something we've talked about, and I realize other things have come up that have been very pressing over the years. So I wanted to that was just wonderful, seeing all the options and how that was put together. It was very easy to follow, and I appreciated. And I just was going to say, in passing to the board, that one of the things that one of my passions that I've tried to do, since shortly after getting elected back in 2013, was to keep everybody informed of what's going on in the community, what's going on, not only in Fuquay-Varina, but and surrounding to the other communities, but primarily Fuquay-Varina. And I've worked very hard on that for about 7 years now, of daily posting about what's going on in the community. About a week or 2 weeks ago, the page that I created today in the Quay won Best in the Triangle again for the second year in a row. And that was very exciting. I feel like that I created it because when the newspapers went away, we had 2 newspapers, as everyone knows, in the town, and when they went away, this kind of filled in a gap to keep people informed about what's going on with our town, what's going on with not just town news, but just the people of our community. So I was very excited to receive that. I didn't expect it this year because they included my category with websites. So I didn't include it this year. I was not only blogs, but websites. The interesting thing is I'm really neither. I'm not a blog or a website, but it's probably where I most closest fit. So it's very exciting, and I wanted, I've had help over the years with it from people, and I want to thank them and all the people who've helped me with the site over the years to make it another newspaper, in town that focuses on our community. So that was all. Thank you.
All right, great, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Wunsch. And Commissioner Wunsch's daughter helped us, and she served on that Recreation Master Plan board, and appreciated her help as well.
Thank you, Mayor.
Commissioner Gardner.
I would like to add my thanks for the work that you and staff did on the issue of restrooms in our parks. Thank you very much. It was informative and helpful, and I feel good that we're going to probably get something done here. I think it's important. I wanted to mention that the On Plain Air online auction is July 16th through July 25th. And the links to the auction are on the FVDA Facebook page and the website. And if you haven't seen the art around town, if you go to the website, you can find out where the paintings are displayed. They're displayed in different businesses in our dual downtown. So go look at them and look at them online. It's amazing that the Downtown Association was able to pull this off this year it was done pretty much virtually, and the paintings are the best they've ever been. It's just, the artist, it was a little different because of the way we had to do it, and the artist could paint somewhere besides these downtown areas, but it's really great. Please look and bid, and half the money goes to the artist, and half of it comes back to FVDA as part of the funding for that organization. And you might realize that this year they, like many nonprofits, have not been able to do some of the things that ordinarily do help fund that organization, like Dinner on Depot. So please go online, FVDA Facebook page and website, and check out On Plain Air. You'll be glad you did.
You and everybody buy one, and you can also sponsor an artist. Is that drawn to a conclusion? Do they need any more sponsors, Marilyn?
Well, yeah, you need to ask,
Dawn,
contact the office about that, ask Dawn. probably that sponsorship is gone, but there's certainly things you can sponsor because, you know, the opportunities to raise funding to help them do what they do, and they've been supporting these businesses we've talked about tonight. They've worked really hard to, you know, to help be some support for our businesses that are struggling in this COVID situation. So just check out the website and the Facebook page.
Okay.
There'll be ways you can help them out too. And they are they're the feet on the streets with these merchants and businesses down in the downtown.
Okay, thank you, Marilyn. You know, I want to say this, and I hate to close on a bad note, but it's important. Adam and I have, or it's town staff and I have been involved in these conference calling, Zoom meetings for the last month. And one thing that keeps coming back to me is Adam's going to have to be creative as we get into our finances, because our finances are probably going to be $500,000 to maybe up to $1 million different than where we projected. And we're not any different than the Charlottes or the Raleighs. Our numbers aren't quite as high, but we know that our sales tax is definitely going to be much, much lower, not a little bit lower, but much, much lower. And there are many other fees that are out there that probably will not reach the goals that we thought that they would. And some of it, I'm sure that Adam is thinking is going to be some creative hiring, you know, delaying some as long as you can. But the truth of all this is we're in a very challenging time, and our partners out there need to recognize this, you know, as well. I think that you're seeing cities like Raleigh canceling, you know, these events, and it's happening all across the state. We're not unusual about this, but it appears that this is going to go on for a while. Now the governor's got some interesting decisions to make. One of them, and it's really mystifies me, is the opening of the schools. I hope that our children can get back into the sort of standard with a school that all of us had growing up, because it's part of who we are. But there will be challenges with that, and all of us have got to be really patient and understanding of this as we move forward. And the other issue is our businesses, just like we talked about the meal earlier this evening. These are maybe two businesses that we figured out a way to work with and to try to help, you know, in the future, and the meal is maybe a help in the future. But we all need to support our local businesses the very best we can, and the local associations, more so than we have in the past, a lot like Marilyn is talking about, because they do an awful lot of good work. You know, this time we need them more than we've ever needed them. And I just say that because of some of those conversations that Adam and I have been privileged to, and knowing where the bus is going as we go on down the road, it's going to be some tough issues. Okay. I don't have anything else. You want the closed session?
We do have a closed session tonight pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143, 318, 11A3, attorney-client privilege, and A6, economic development.
Mayor, so moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank everyone for attending and being with us this evening. We will now go into closed session.